work session. If we would all rise. States of America. There's been some adjustments to the order that we're going to conduct things in the agenda. And that's because we think Sarah is going to be able to, you can comment.
Sure. So the planning and zoning administrator will not be able to get here until 7 p.m. So we're going to make some slight modifications to the agenda. We'll start with property tax for disabled police and EMS, move to Southern Maryland Art Convention, and then we're going to jump down to slow bike language adjustments, water and sewer, and FIDS Covenant, and Richfield Station developer activities. And then by that time, I'm assuming she'll be here, and so we'll be able to move back up to the top with land use tables and then move through the rest of the agenda as according.
Okay, so is that clear?
It is clear, but Sarah would be helpful to discuss the FIDS as well, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to add something, a number 10, to discuss adding a plaque to the rail trail for the mayor and council who were in office when that project was built.
Second.
Thought there's already,
There's not. No. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye to making the amendment.
Aye.
I thank you. I've never sought recognition for it, but I appreciate that, Eric. Thank you. Only worked on it for 22 years to get it done.
I thought there was an informational board there, no?
No, there's never been any recognition of the counselor that was in office at the time that it was contracted and built. Okay. Anything else before we move forward? Anthony and Jamie are listed to talk about the property tax for disabled police and EMS. Who wants to take it?
I can take it. So there were some conversations that we were having with some folks, and Stu Cumbo came in, had reached out to Anthony and I regarding this. And so basically, if you think about it, most states in Maryland, Calvert County and Chesapeake Beach recognizes veterans who have 100% permanent and total disability and are exempt from property taxes. So then the idea was here to also recognize police and EMS that fall in that same category. So just to be really clear with the council, it doesn't mean if you get like a 10% rating that you automatically would get this. This is you're 100%. So we engaged with Dan to see what the impact would be for the town. And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was roughly around $5,500 that we would have to absorb. And I think this is a very simple win for us, and it recognizes some goodness that our police and EMS services do.
And it's pretty cut and dry. It's not too complicated at all. And I'm pretty sure that when we are ready to push forward with a vote, we can have Stuart come out and talk some more about it. But it's just really that simple. Something that's already happening. We just introducing it to the town of Chesapeake Beach. And I believe that the easier way to do it is if they have that clearance already from the state, then they should be able to have it from the town as well.
Yeah, and I just one clarification. The county does do it as well, so we're just mimicking their policy. I was talking to Dan. One piece of why we're not introducing the actual resolution is this would probably be like effective at the new fiscal year, so 2027. So we would talk about it starting in like March, and then we need to dig into the code to figure out where exactly we would adjust the language. We didn't go that far in current state.
Yeah, and just a quick update, it will be effective in the new fiscal year, but we will likely have it prepared for you and presented for the council to vote on beforehand, so we can get that taken care of and moved out of the way.
Thank you.
Great.
I just have a question. So, is the impetus here that, we have information that disabled police and EMS, have a tougher time paying the taxes than other disabled people? Or what are we going for here?
Oh, it's not that we have the implication that they have a tougher time. The one good thing that we did already this year was make sure that we didn't go up on property taxes for the town, period. But we do think that being able to offer this in the town that, you know, loves their veterans, their EMS folks and people who work in law and order, if we are able to afford to them the same thing that you can get afford in other towns, we can probably, one, retain people to stay here, and two, have it as a beacon for people to want to come live here. And it's just also it's a good gesture from a council to be able to put this on the board so that it is something that we did for our townsfolk. Now, we don't have a definitive numbers on how many, you know, people it will help or if it will help their households particularly, but it's something that's better to be there than not if we can make that so.
I guess my question is, so anytime that you're creating a special class, you know, you're leaving some people out. So we're not saying we're not saying people who are disabled through a social security claim in general. We're just saying police and EMS. We're excluding teachers that may be disabled, or, you know, and so on.
Mhm. I mean, yes.
Is that
that's true.
something we want to do as a council? I'm not sure. I
Or
like
do
that.
we want to open it up for teachers, or do we want to not do it for the police and EMS because we're not opening it up for teachers? Because we can be succinct about that. Because if you want to talk about helping teachers, I'm all for that. We can have that conversation as well. So are we going to not do something, or are we going to do something for more people? Which one would you rather?
I'd rather if we're looking at it as a disabled person has difficulty paying the property tax,
Mhm.
then I would rather it be a broader exemption, including that would include more classes of people.
I don't think this is a disabled person. This is a first responders, police, you know, fire, EMS. So it ties just with like the military, same thing. So there, you know, you use the term, there's a, you know, exclusive class. It just ties to them in the same one and just matches the county's current policy that's in place.
I could give an example how it could maybe be related.
Mhm.
So if the reason why I believe it is so low is most of first responders have previous military experience. So if they are disabled, their disability property insurance is covered from the state. And there's a small percentage of people who go straight into law enforcement and are like fire EMS. I think it'd probably be more fire EMS, but I think there was a sheriff that was in a pursuit and got shot, and he's not able to work anymore. I don't know if he was in the service, so it would be like somebody like that. I know as an example that it might help, but it's very small amount, and I think that reason the monetary number is so small is because it's already majority of people are covered through the being a veteran. So already
I mean, I like Eric's idea, and I would like to explore that more. I don't think that takes this off the table particularly, but if there is a way that we can help teachers and other people in the community, I think we should definitely look into that as well. We would just have to do the work to do that. For right now, we have the beginning work for this one, which could lay the groundwork for what we do in the future, but I would never, ever be the one to say, hey, we can't help others as well. I think the idea of helping teachers and things like that would be awesome, especially in our community. I think it would be something that would that will hopefully happen in other communities if we, you know, took the torch and did it first, if we are doing it first. But we have to look into it more.
Thank you. All right, let's go, let's keep moving on. The second item in our agenda tonight is the Southern Maryland Art Convention, SmartCon. Anthony, you want to take it away?
All right, I'm gonna keep it very short and succinct. Southern Maryland Art Convention, I created about 2 years ago. This was something that I felt was a good idea to have as a destination event for Calvert County. But now that I am, you know, here in Chesapeake Beach and getting more in tune with the area and the townsfolk, I think that well, I've decided that moving an event like this to Chesapeake Beach, letting it be a destination event for Calvert County and Chesapeake Beach would be a great way into the future to have another event for us on a yearly basis to help out with economic development for the county and for the town, and to engage families and students and people who would like to attend to have a great free event that deals with STEM. I'll just read over what it is. The Southern Maryland Art Convention is a one-day celebration of creativity, innovation, and community in Calvert County. The event brings together artists, technology enthusiasts, and local residents to explore the intersection of art, STEM, and culture. Attendees can engage with hands-on STEM and robotics workstations, explore a marketplace featuring local and regional artisans, and experience the annual Push Play Animated Film Festival. I'll skip down to the highlights. Free community-focused event, designated Calvert County Convention, hands-on activities, STEM kits, mini drones, VR stations, flight simulators, robotics presentations, animated film series, curated art vendors, outreach and engagement opportunities for local businesses, organizations, nonprofits, and schools. Potential impact, engage families and community members, inspire creativity and innovation, connect communities through art and technology, draws 900 plus attendees annually, fosters partnerships among schools, artists, and businesses, provides hands-on experience that inspire future innovators, serves as a yearly destination event supporting Calvert County and Twin Beaches economic development. The rest of it is pretty much simple and easy to read through. What we do have in here is the pitch deck that's gone out to different places like the Calvert County government, PNC Bank, Board of Education, and a couple of other folks like Snapchat and things like that. So the reason why it's brought up here is because after I created it and wanted it to become a mainstay here, we're going to have it at Rod and Reel next year in April. We already have a date set, time set, and what I want to do is move this forward to be something that the town is a part of. It's a nonprofit event. It's free for the community to come out to. Arts Council of Calvert County will be taking care of the vendors, and that will be a donation of funds to them for the people that come in and sell things. We have a couple of groups already on board. The Calvert County Minority Business Association is on board, and East John Youth Center is already on board as well. We're waiting on word back from PNC for a donation to move forward with it. And for the town's involvement, I'm looking at an amount of $4,700 to help secure the space. So I just wanted to bring it up, let you guys know what it was, what we're doing. If you have any questions about it, you can ask me. If you want to get any more materials on it or have questions about how it went before, we can do that as well. But that's what SmartCon is in a nutshell, summarized.
Thank you. All right, we're going to jump down now to the slow bike language adjustments. Laura.
Okay, great idea, by the way.
Thank you.
We're doing slow bike policy.
Yes.
Okay, so at the beginning of every Walkable Community Advisory Group meeting, we go around the room and I ask the committee members for observations, what they see when they walk around town, what they'd like to bring up, and this came from that process. One of my committee members was riding a bike on the boardwalk and somebody very angrily told her that, well, she wasn't somebody that she knew, very angrily told them that biking was not allowed. And so she asked, is biking allowed on the boardwalk by Bayfront Park? And so we did some research and we found out that it in fact is not per our code. And so we did some more research and we noticed that, you know, in most towns, the biking policy is a slow biking policy, yield to pedestrians. There's lots of signage, share the path, that type of policy throughout most walkable towns, really most towns. And I got some of these pictures from College Park and different areas around us. So I reached out to all of you guys and thank you for your comments. I think they all went out on our agenda for our meeting. So I think Dan provided some comments that illustrated what like double the, I can't remember what it was now, but it was twice the speed of walking was what you presented.
It's 7 miles an hour is
for
about
a bike.
twice.
Yeah. I presented that speed that you offered. My co-chair knew exactly, he related. He was like, yes, that's the speed. We talked about it for a while. I think Anthony mentioned that maybe we might want to include some, distance between bikes and pedestrians, and we discussed all of that. And we ultimately arrived at the idea that almost all of this would be very hard to enforce. If you're talking about speeds or distances, how would that even be enforceable? And I think Eric said you either allow bikes or you don't. We talked about that as well. The conclusion that the committee came to was that we wanted to communicate that the town should have a slow biking policy with yielding to pedestrians and the like, and that we really didn't need to get overly detailed about speed and distance and all these other things that really aren't enforceable anyways. But in order to do that, we have to remove the ban from the code. And so that's what you see before you. It's some adjusted code language that takes out the word prohibited. And it says on all boardwalks, because we went around and we were like, well, why is it this boardwalk and not that boardwalk? And someone suggested maybe the railway trail hadn't been built yet. And so that's why it's only the one boardwalk. So we took out, any specific reference and we just made it all boardwalks. And we provided some examples of signs that the town would need to replace the signs that said no biking allowed on that boardwalk. And so I would imagine that the replacement signs would come out of the Walkable Community Advisory Group line item budget, and it wouldn't be that much. But we really need the code passed. Another element of the code is there is currently a $100 fine for riding your bike on the boardwalk. We left a fine in case somebody's really ridiculous and somebody wants to force ridiculous behavior and not allow it, and we changed it to 20. But that's what the committee came up with, and I'm open to your questions and hopefully your support for the code change and the policy change.
Got any questions or comments?
And just for clarity, are we skateboards and will skateboards and rollerblades, will they be ushered in as well, or are they still out, but you're just doing bicycles?
No, so everything in caps is added language. Everything not in caps was already in the code.
So in the group, did they talk about, because somebody had a bike incident, but if we're talking about wheels, period, does all that have to be thought about being brought in, or?
So our thought was to keep the scope of the change to changing it from no bike to slow bike. We did add something that said, so right now scooters are banned, skates are banned, all that stuff is banned. Instead of banning all scooters, for example, we added the words hard wheeled, because the reason you can't have skates and scooters on the boardwalk is because it's too detrimental to the boards. So we really tried to be as narrow as we possibly could in changing the policy of not allowing bikes to allowing bikes and offering some guidance
Okay.
via signage.
So the only thing, so going forward, only hard-wheeled devices will not be allowed.
Correct.
bikes
So
are
if you
good.
had a soft-wheeled scooter,
Then that's fine. Okay.
then you could do it. We did not talk about anything motorized, and we do not want to talk about anything motorized in this particular amendment. If somebody wants to talk about that later, I think that's a more elaborate conversation. But we would like to quickly change the policy to slow bike instead of no bike,
Well,
is what the request from my committee was.
thanks for your committee's good feedback. I find having simple standard governance everywhere. So you're like, oh, well, what's the rule over here? And what's the rule over here? So thanks for them pointing that out. Yeah, I like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
My only feedback would be that they should think about if they want to just say no hard-wheeled devices on the boardwalk, then that way we don't have to come back and go again about electric this or whatever other things. As long as the wheels are not detrimental to the boardwalk itself, then we don't have to come back and say, hey, my kid was out there doing this, and then they got screamed at, and now we want to change that again. So if it's a thing about the wheels themselves, if we focus on that, then we cover the gamut of what can't be on there and what can.
So you're suggesting no hard wheel, what's the word? Give me the word for like,
Well, can I, before you guys start changing the words, can I ask a question? So I know kids have been riding their scooters and everybody rides on that thing, no matter what our policy says right now. Yeah, I mean, we know, right?
Is it rubber wheels though, right?
I don't think all the electric scooters are rubber wheel. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they are.
Might be hard.
so electric vehicles are in a different section of the code, and we're only asking to change this section of the code.
But are they hard wheels?
A hard wheel scooter is like a razor scooter.
Yeah, the ones that you see, the kids, the
Yeah.
e-scooters, those are all.
But even like the razors, because there's a lot of kids that go from Richfields, they just go all over the place that are like, do we see wear and tear from those on them? Yeah.
Definitely. And maybe instead of looking, because anyone could say soft, right? Maybe you should require air in the tire. That'll cover it. And most of your bigger scooters that are motorized have air in the tire, and that's giving, right? Because someone could say soft. Well, yeah, it's soft to me. That's a hard definition.
Or we just go with pneumatic.
Pneumatic
Okay.
tires. I mean, that's just a thought.
So I'm good with what I like this. The only thing that I would, outside of whatever we come out with the final language, the only thing I would probably just nix the fine in general, just because I know it says 100, and I know we were talking about like if somebody's excessive, I still don't know how that would be enforceable, or how we're cherry picking somebody out there just because they just happen, is it our code enforcement sees it or somebody reports it? So, I just don't know how it's enforceable.
Sure.
$20 sound like fun.
Yeah.
$100
Yeah,
sound
I
like
might
you're
go
gonna get in
rip it,
trouble
rip it
for
off.
it, but $20 sound like I had fun and
Yeah.
I paid for
But
it.
I do support this.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll do from this conversation is that I'll write down what everybody said after I listen to it again. Provide it to Alyssa, and we can take her recommendation.
If you look at pneumatic wheels, then you don't have to worry about going back for the electric devices either. You'll have it all taken care of, and everybody will not have to, worry about what the repercussions are, what the code is. We know we can have things on there that have air in the wheels. That's it.
I would say that the motorized
Mhm.
vehicles probably have more concern among residents and more opportunities for speeding, so it gets a little more complicated. So maybe if we could do this in two parts, that would be great.
Well, I think the slow speed covers that. So with the slow speed, which is the twice the
Yeah.
walking, most of, like if it's electronic, they'll have a speedometer mostly on them. So that the goal is for people to not hurt somebody else because they're flying around. I think that's the intention of it. So if we all know the right thing to do is to get off and walk when like July 4th and July 3rd. We're not going to be riding on there because there's too many people. So you have to dismount. That's covered there. And I'm glad that is. But us saying, well, in wintertime, there's nobody there. So we're like, nope, you got to go around. I say the slow speed protects people that are walking. It makes everyone conscious, and it's all of us doing right by our neighbors. Let's all be good neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm open to everybody's suggestions on the section of the code that addresses the other vehicles but this is the section of the code that I want to put forward for now.
Okay.
And then.
Then come back and
we'll
do
work
slow
on the
speed for
second
the
one.
other section.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but hold on, I want to circle back to that though. So if somebody rides an electric bike, is somebody going to say, hey, you're not allowed to be on here?
That's a separate
Because
part.
I know it's a separate
It's a
part,
separate
but
section in
but
our
a bike
code.
is people look at bikes as a bike, right? And e-bikes are on a huge uptick. So if you're riding your bicycle and you're like, hey, I can ride my bike, and then you go get an electric bike, you're on there, they're not going to pay attention to a sign that said they're not supposed to have an e-bike on there. They're just going to say, yeah, bikes are allowed.
And if
So
we're
they're
replacing
gonna be on.
signs, let's just replace them once.
Right.
So if we're going to change it for bikes in general, instead of doing it in two parts, we just change it all at once.
Let's take care of everything.
Just knock it
Okay.
out.
A slow.
Yeah, we can say the
Mhm.
word slow, but I'm telling you
Right.
right now, like nobody, the 7-mile-an-hour thing is cool, but I think them kids are going to ride their bikes, whether it's a bicycle, or e-bike or whatever. If there's nobody on that path, they're going to rip it. So
Our job is to set it.
Right.
What the policy is, our job is to say 7 miles an hour or twice the thing. I think that's there. Like,
Okay, current.
it's everybody else's job to follow.
I mean, you could put the slow. I
Understand.
like the slow one. I like what are you putting? Just
We
saying,
can do a definition of what that is. And
a
it's
giant sign. Don't go fast, people.
Clarifying question.
Flashing sign from
Clarifying question. So like e-bike's different part of the code, right? But an e-bike, you might be able to know how fast you're going. A skateboard, you wouldn't know. So a bike, anything that you don't have a speedometer that tells you how fast you're going. So effectively,
So this section of the code addresses skateboards, bicycles, and similar devices.
yeah.
This section of the code does not include motorized vehicles. There is a section of the code that does that. Right. So right. And that's the reason why there's no speed in the code that's presented to you right now. There's no speed suggested.
Right.
It just says slow.
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking like pulling the thread, how would town hall staff enforce this?
Right. That's the whole point of all of it, that both Jamie and I are making. It's all not enforceable. So we just want to communicate the policy that bicycles are in fact allowed
Yes.
on the front boardwalk.
Mhm.
And that, and then provide some guidance via signage that pedestrians have the right of way. Bicycles should yield to pedestrians. They should go slow around pedestrians. If necessary, they should get off their bike.
Okay.
So that's the idea here. And,
Yeah, I think it's good. I just think functionally, how do we make sure that this is outside of the signage? How are we making sure? Because what I envision is, okay, well, we see the signage and they're going faster than, they're not going slow, right? This is what the calls that we're going to get to town hall. So I was just wondering if there was additional thought given to the true enforcement of it. Or is
right.
the idea
so
just
there
to
was
not?
thought given to it.
Absolutely.
And the consensus was that it is essentially unenforceable, that we
Okay.
just want to communicate the policy.
Okay.
speed.
Yes. Speed cameras.
I just wanted to give my 2 cents, and we talked, Lori, thanks for calling me and asking me about this also. Appreciate you looping me in. Yeah, it's my problem is everyone else's, that it's probably not enforceable at all. And I kind of really probably would not even like to see something codified into the code that's not enforceable. So we know it's not enforceable, and to write it in there is disingenuous. So, I'm fine with allowing the bicycles, and I'm fine with even putting up a sign that says, please be respectful and ride slowly. But I don't know that I like putting it in the code when we know for a fact that it's just, fluff there.
Right.
And then I also agree with Anthony about the $20. I'd keep it at 100 because if there is anything you can enforce, if it's at $100, then people are gonna be like, "Ooh, that's $100." It's $20. It's like Anthony said, it's fun. Oh, okay, you can get my $20. Come get my $20. You know.
50.
So it's not that we're trying to put something in the code, we're trying to take something out of the code, because right now the code bans bikes.
Yeah, and
which is
I'm
why
okay
we
with
can't put it
allowing
on signs.
bikes. I just it's the unenforceable part with the speed
So
that I think maybe we could just put a sign up that
Mhm.
says, "Please be respectful of your neighbors, ride slowly, ride," and or whatever. We can put a sign up asking people to behave well, but it's different. I mean, that's no different than putting it in the
Mhm.
code effectively because
Right.
it's unenforceable.
We would just have to remove it from the code. That's the whole point. We have to get it out of the code.
Can I just add to the only thing I would say, I agree with everything except for we say it's not enforceable. So let's not write it in the code if we can't enforce it. I'm with you 1,000%, but we can't then put a fine on it because it's not enforceable.
No,
So,
no.
so I would just I would still stick with just removing the language of the fine.
There's other things in here that can be fine, that can be enforced, like the hard wheel stuff,
Mhm.
pneumatic wheels.
Okay.
and that's
So then,
Yeah.
then I would say, can we rewrite it to where it aligns to that mentality? Yeah.
Right. Just get a fight bike discrimination.
I don't know about $100 though. Like
I
we're gonna
think
hit a
e-bikes.
with a $100 fine for a scooter.
So what did we arrive at? We are removing this section of the code. We are.
I think you should
keeping this language.
re-watch this later and then rewrite it based off
I
of that.
can't.
I think pneumatic wheels, air in the wheels is a good idea. Keep it at 100. They can have the bikes and just talk to your folks to see if e-bikes should be added with bikes because most e-bikes are also manual and you can go back and forth and you don't want that to be a whole nother issue.
We did talk about e-bikes would need to be, if we did go down that road, that e-bikes and things of that like would be okay if they were operated manually on the boardwalk. Because the boardwalks are very narrow.
Oh, but
And
you know what?
again, it's not going to be enforceable.
Actually, when you say bikes, you say bicycles. So that's the end of
So we
that
just
conversation.
wanna-
Anyway, it's a bike. Yeah.
This is
It is a can of worms because the thing is, it's disturbing too. We just want to make sure like there's, so
We just
we're
want to.
keeping the one together. This is that, and then we're going to revisit the other one. Is that what we're saying?
That's what I would like to do. High level, we would like to allow bikes on the boardwalk and
Can
not
we
ban them.
Can we kind of agree to this? We're all there, and then when we look at the other one and we pass both of them at the same time, considering it's winter time coming up, we might be able to take the other one on, and then we can look at them both together.
I mean, yeah, we could do anything. we
All right.
want.
This does say all bicycles. It doesn't say manually powered bicycles.
Well, yes, there's two sections of the code. One
Right.
deals with electronic.
Yeah, let's see if we can.
Bicycle is a bicycle. It has air tires. It's all good. $100 fine.
All
You
right,
good.
so there's a second section of the code. Somebody
Fine.
present me some code. I'll bring it to my committee. And we'll do that section, that second section too. Okay?
Now you take your down, you got it.
But I want to make one more comment and I think, it seems to me that the pattern is anywhere, not just in our town, but in Washington DC where they have the electric scooters and all that stuff, they brought those in. The faster traveling person claims the right of way, always, it seems.
Mm.
They yell behind you, on your left, and you have to jump out of their way. You know what I mean?
Signs.
So, we should be aware of that when we say, okay, we're going to allow bicycles. This, saying slow is not enforceable. The sign would be the same as this, but that's not enforceable either. The reality of it is, if we allow bicycles, we're probably creating a situation where the right of way is going to the bicycler.
So that's not.
Not
what's
the intention. I
communicated
know.
outside.
I know.
And in most places, and the alternative is banning bicycles, which we all agree we don't want to do. I do think people can, for the most part, be responsible. But you've taken 3 different positions in this conversation, so it's hard to follow.
I mean, I'm not against I'm for bicyclers. I don't really care either way. I'm just kind of like, thinking about it and thinking about experiences I've had in Washington DC with the electric scooters and everything. And even on the boardwalk, where their bikes are allowed on the Fishing Creek one, if you're walking there and they're coming up behind you, they're just yelling on your left and flying by.
Those signs could be helpful.
So signs would be, it's on, signs would be helpful. It's thinking about what happens if someone gets hurt, right? Like they're going to have to, they're going to defer to the code. So making sure, and Alyssa will do this, whatever you suggest, it'll be run through that lens and that filter, because that's where it's like likely going to matter more, right? If I just think you're going fast, maybe not me, but if someone else thinks you're going fast, they can call town hall and say there was a person on a blue bike going fast. We're not going to be able to follow up. I mean, I guess we could pull the footage from the cameras and do facial recognition for a $20 or $100 fine. I mean, we could do that, but it's probably going to matter more if someone gets hurt. And so making sure that we've accounted for that, and our attorney will do that. So I think what you've presented is good. Send it to Alyssa, CC me, and then we can figure out what needs to be accounted for.
Right.
moving
I
forward.
think I already did send it.
There were updates from this conversation, correct?
Um,
Like the
There
pneumatic
were-
wheels
well-
and then the amount,
they're right.
the speed.
I can add pneumatic wheels. The conversation about e-bikes and that type of thing.
Yeah.
That is coming from a council member to me for a different
Yeah.
part of the code.
Okay.
Um,
So pneumatic wheels, and there's specific language that was proposed about this, what slow means.
there was not.
If
Slow means
Did you make
slow.
it?
I
It just. is
no,
the
I just said
guidance.
it's just not enforceable. But
Okay.
so, and then for the other language in the code, we could just literally just say we would either scratch that piece out, or I haven't read the code, so I don't know what it says. I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Well, common knowledge isn't always common.
So everybody has had this for a couple of weeks now.
Right. So I'm referring to the conversation that we've had right now. So the only change to the document that is in the packet that I understand is pneumatic wheels.
That is what I understand. That is my intent, to reword the section that says that you can't have hard wheels and insert something that suggests that the wheels should have air in them.
Okay.
That,
Can I say one thing, just for
Yes.
clarification, because dealing with it here and other, so that's a definitive measure. Anyone can say these wheels are soft, these wheels are not. So they're
Mhm.
pneumatic wheels only.
Air.
Pneumatic wheels are permitted only, everything else is not. Just for clarification,
makes
because that's
sense.
definitive, whether they're moving, you can look at it and say, you met the standard or you didn't. You can't touch a tire and say, oh, that one's soft, it's rubber.
Mm.
It's pneumatic only. And I've personally seen the scooters and stuff when they do their little sideways kicks. Anyone can go to the triangle at the trail, you'd see what happens.
I've seen them dug into the boardwalk, yeah. And by the way, Laura, you were asking what they're called. They're called micro mobility devices.
oh, okay, nice.
If you want to add that somewhere.
The only thing I'm adding is
What all the devices are called.
skateboards, bicycles, and similar devices.
It says anything under 30 miles per hour and less than 500 pounds.
Rollerblades, roller skates, and scooters. I'll reword it. I'll reword it and send it, and then we'll send it to Alyssa.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Okay. The next item that we're going to tackle on the agenda is, it's listed as item 7, but it's now become item 4, water and sewer. The water rate study update. It's, Jamie, I believe you're going to roll with this.
Yeah, so obviously we've seen the draft report from New Gen. And I'll give my perspective here. I don't want to skew the conversation either because I feel like I always talk for 10 minutes about it and then go back. So maybe I'll come back with a comment. But I think the purpose of this being on here is we need to talk about the report. And then I think collectively as a council, we have to determine the approach forward on personnel costs. And we have to determine the approach forward on what it really comes down to. And New Gen said this a couple times is are we focusing in on stability and sustainability, or are we focusing on variability with lesser stability, sustainability? Like, so, if you think about how he said, so it's fixed fees versus tiered fees, which one are we putting an emphasis on? And I have a perspective that I've gathered over the last few weeks when I've been digging around and I know everybody on this council has tried to play with the New Gen model. I know it's not easy to play with it. I'm on version 9.6 on my own computer, but
What's that chuckle I hear?
yeah. So Dan knows. But I will, if you don't mind, because I'm so close to it and I have a very, I wouldn't say aggressive perspective, but I have an aggressive because I've been so close to it, I will just comment maybe like before you, Mayor, or something, just to let everybody else have an opinion where I'm not creating a bias or a separate perspective.
Anybody else want to comment?
What is the comment on?
The New Gen.
The New Gen, like your thoughts on
Any feedback
that. I
on
mean,
New
if you
Gen?
want me to stir it up, I will. But yeah, your thoughts on the New Gen report and what we want to do.
So the proposal is not part of our packet. Are we commenting on the?
I don't have a proposal. It's the water and so it was supposed to be a discussion on how we want to approach from a stability or versus variability perspective. And that's what Samelia had asked us last council meeting, was to come into the work session to think through how we wanted to approach personnel costs and stability versus variability.
Well, one of the things is I actually wanted to be involved in the conversation. That y'all had the conversation before I was on the council. So I've done a little bit of things and looking into it from a different perspective. And I think that there's the rates parts of it, but there's the overall manual and stuff like that needs to have adjustments to it. Then there's a lot of items that are going to be changing throughout that are on the agenda also, with the ADUs, potential for short-term rentals, home-based businesses. I know that inside of some of the things that I've worked through, I've noticed that some things are listed as residential for EDUs and some things are listed as commercial. So maybe having a little bit more clarity and not rushing to it, but really digging through it to make sure we resolve it once and for all. Another thing I put in with that little draft was do we want to look at classifications of different fixed fees? I think the fixed fee model that has been presented is the one that best suits our town in a version of that. But I also see that there's potential for clarification, so we know what's a commercial EDU and what's a residential EDU. And we should also have, if there's only so many units available, we should have an account of it. I know we have some dormant or inactive accounts. We should sort of have an account of all of our EDUs. Like in my home, I have an apartment in the basement, but I don't rent it out. But it's a potential to have it as a rental. So having maybe a dormant fee or something like that, and then basically it keeps everything tracked. So that's all. It's what the little draft I had there for us to expand the categories to see if any of that helps us come to an answer. But the goal is to be fair to everyone in town and to take a good approach to it so that we sort of resolve it once and for all for this council and the future councils.
Other comments, questions?
Uh, for a lot of, and thanks for that, Dan, but a lot of that stuff, like, once we figure out what we are going to put in place for people to pay, then we can sit down with the other stakeholders and go over the manual, because we need the manual changes, and correct me if I'm wrong, the manual changes when we have all entities at the table. That's not just us doing that. Am I correct, or is that not?
So the water and sewer manual primarily is an in-town discussion.
Right.
We do need to make sure we inform our partners because there are certain fees that they need to be aware of.
Mhm.
There is an interjurisdictional agreement that's currently in place, and that is something that is separate. It has to involve all partners. So that's the county, that's North Beach, that's Anne Arundel County, because they all have some sort of stake in how the interjurisdictional agreement works.
And we get to that after we have all of our ducks in a row here, like, is that
So
something separate?
we have a quote from Nugent on that. But the primary focus for the council is to figure out what the water and sewer rates need to be moving forward.
And so with that being the conversation, we have to look at, what has happened. What has happened is that the fixed fees were raised on people exponentially without, any warning. Then on top of that, we went up 48% on what we were paying. It was a 48% increase. Where do we land now? What works? What makes sure that we keep our infrastructure in place? And what is also not gouging people? Like, we don't want to come back now and have something that's over that 48%, because people are going to be like, well, what's the purpose of us even being upset? Because now when we feel like things might be a little bit tighter, you're charging us more. There's not going to be a lot of thought in how many years have passed and so on and so forth. People are going to see the bills. We've had people that when that 48% hit, they weren't able to pay. They had to leave Chesapeake Beach. But then at the same time, we have to look at what's in front of us to make sure that anybody who's doing over 9,000 gallons aren't getting hit over their head with an exorbitant price. So the question is, what's the goal? Where do we want to land? What do we think is feasible? And what do we think is good for the county to have a starting point to go forward from there?
Well, I guess my hope is that we have our pricing, but before we fully implement it, we take that next step to make sure that we've looked at all the other items that need to be
Variables, mhm.
resolved, so that when we resolve it, there's a piece to it. And we're like, all right, we did our job. So we have our pricing model, but before we hard stamp that, we also look at the other items that may have been overlooked, and we clarify that, especially with upcoming proposed changes. So it's one change that takes everything into account, and we just move forward together.
I have a couple high level comments. I have not played with the model. And I'm anxious to see what people come up with. I think Jamie and I have gone round and round about a couple conceptual items. So I just want to talk about those. First, I know, Dan, you have this proposal, and it lists two different rates for commercial and residential. And before we even talked about that, I was hoping Alyssa would be here to tell us whether or not we could even do that. I do think naturally a lot of our commercial users are going to be at a higher tier, so we might not need to differentiate, but we would need to signal through the tier if we did a variable rate. So just that said, that might be a better, fairer way to, and more legal way to address commercial versus residential. So The one thing that we've discussed at length is what Jamie calls them the people costs. And when we first started talking about this, people suggested removing the people cost out of the utility fund. I'm extremely against that because the people costs are the operating costs, and that it's just not, it's not a thing. And we really need this, we really need to have this fund be self-sustaining and understandable so that we can budget everything else. If we are constantly doing what has been done for years and years and years and ending the budget cycle with transfers from the general fund, or if we are pay-going our capital improvements and they're very random, we don't understand what they're going to be from year to year. This fund is not understandable to us, and it affects our ability to budget everything. So we really can't do that. Of course, we want to be fair, and of course, we want people to pay as little as possible to sustain the system. And we want the people who would be impacted the most and that are the most vulnerable, that need their water and their sewer utilities for their daily living, to be able to afford them. And I just want to give an example because I was having a really hard time communicating to the council why a high user should be charged at a higher variable rate. So I came up with an analogy. So say your water usage equals a rock, right? The pipes equal a grocery bag. You are an elderly person, and every day,
That would be me.
okay, and you're very unclean, so you have a little tiny rock. Just kidding. So every day you put a little tiny rock in the bag, but every day this other user over here puts a boulder in the bag. Well, if the bag is the system, the bag is going to break sooner because of the boulder that's put in each day. And so that's why if you're a higher user, you wear and tear the system at a higher rate than a smaller user. And I do think it is appropriate to have a higher user pay a higher variable rate because they are taxing the system faster than a smaller user. And additionally, in most cases, your very high users are also profiting. And there is a difference between a need and something that you use and wear and tear while making a profit. But I do not know if it's actually legal to make the differentiation. We would have to check with Alyssa, but it is logical based on use.
I've shared it with Alyssa. She's researching it. She'll get back to you.
I agree with a little bit of what everybody's saying, and I don't think we should overcomplicate this. We already had an audit done. That's what we paid them to do, and they came up with a pretty close model to what I think needs to happen. I know we wanted to look into the salaries, and I believe the staff is doing a study on.
Yes, the staff is doing that timekeeping study, but what I want to make sure that everyone's clear about is that we looked more into where the primary pool from the staff side, right? Like when you're looking at the number, and the majority of it comes from Public Works, who are responsive to a whole host of things, right? Every time a missed utility comes in, Public Works responds to that. That affects the utility fund. And so when you're looking at the people cost, understand that the majority of the people cost is coming from Public Works that was added in, is coming from Public Works being responsive to what's happening with the water lines throughout the town. So that's important to know, because if Public Works is not doing it, someone would have to do it, right? So that's just important to note.
So all this like IQ fiber stuff, that's not getting part of the study, right? Because we don't want inflated numbers to like make it look worse than it really is.
So what I will say about that is I think that's fair. But before that, before IQ Fiber, it was the installation of new water meters, right? There's always going to be some sort of servicing that's happening. So we can take that into account. But I think that you just need to be mindful that anytime development or growth is happening in the town, if something happens to those water mains, the Public Works is the one being responsive to it.
I mean, if it's something like that, you could almost, with Jay, he seems like he's kind of knows, all right, I got this project next year and next year. He could always proactively say what he would find as a reasonable budget number year in, year out, and say, hey, I project that this is a little higher of a year. And we say, oh, okay, well, that really isn't an overall usage number if there was a project underhand. And so like trying to have a little bit of feedback from one-off projects, that's something that it's hard to create a balanced budget and utility fund for. So I see both sides of an argument. And I think we're all moving in a direction with the conversation. So
I think
Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I was
So I
gonna
have a
say-
laundry list of comments, but I wanted to give Eric a chance because he hit his light first.
I'm waiting my turn.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think their projection showed anybody that was using under 18,000 gallons was gonna see a reduction. I was gonna suggest bumping that up to 21,000. And then instead of the highest users getting a 30% increase, which is pretty astronomical, they could get a 10% increase. And that's where I was hoping that the salaries, by lowering the salaries, expenses would allow us to be able to do that kind of stuff. But it doesn't sound like we're gonna make a lot of movement with the salaries.
We'll finish the study one way or the other, and you'll have the data. But just giving you, like, briefing you on what the reality will likely be.
If I can, while we're in a work session, stand on my own little soapbox. And the only reason I know this data is because I've had people that worked for us, got their licensures and went to like DC Life, went to WSSC. So just for reference for the council, if the Public Works Department did nothing but our 3 water towers and 13 wet wells and 50 miles of water and sewer line, and we were WSSC, we would have 16 employees and do nothing else in town. Just giving you reference. If we were DC Life, we would have 21 employees. They have 1 person for every 500 meters, 1 person for every 3 towers, 1 person for every 5 wet wells, and then 1 person for about every 10 miles. So just giving you reference. We can do all the studies we want, but if we really did it per the manual, it would double. So I'm doing the study as much as I can and trying to keep it tracked. But you think about everything else that Public Works does on top of that. I'm just throwing it out there. It is what it is.
Wasn't there a significant amount of administrative salaries in there? No?
It wasn't significant.
Go ahead.
My turn? Okay. Well, since this is what we're doing here, everybody giving their opinion on this issue. I'll give mine. It hasn't changed for years. Other than the fact that the reason that rates went up, I think we all know, is because the previous administration decided to move some of these salary fees into the utility fund that were not there. So, what's due, the expenses of the fund are going to be what they are if we don't move them back to the general fund or wherever they were before. If we don't move them back, the expenses are still going to be higher than they were, and we're going to have to find a way to cover them. And so, you can use fixed fixed rates and tiers and all that. And, but in the end of the day, you still have the same amount of expenses that you need to cover. So you either try to lower them and then but the point is if you're doing fixed fees and tiers, you're picking winners and losers, period. End of story. Like Councilman Blackwelder was saying about the her analogy about the rocks in the bag. I like the story, but you know, if you use more, if you're doing a flat fee and everybody pays the same rate and they use more, then their bill is higher, and it's covering the fees. So you're projecting what the expenses are going to be for the year on a budget, and you're taking and you just create a flat fee that covers them based on the historical usage. That is what I like. I like the idea of a flat fee, not picking winners or losers, no fixed fee, no tiers, no commercial, no residential. I'm a simplifier. That's who I am. I like to simplify things, and I like them to be fair. If it were up to me, I would lower the overall expenses by reverting we call them people costs. We can call them people costs if we want to, but just to be clear, the people costs that are associated with the treatment plant are in the utility fund. We're not talking about that. That's always been there and will remain there, and they're justly there. We're talking about public works. We're talking about some office people billing. And these expenses have historically not been in the utility fund, and moving them to the utility fund is the primary reason that rates went up. And if we don't address that, then we're still going to have to cover those expenses with rates. One thing also is I think it's problematic and probably over cumbersome to try to track the time spent working on this issue or that issue. To me, that's mind blowing that we would even consider working that into our day-to-day process, like we don't have enough to do already. And one other thing to think about that I hadn't really thought about, I mean, I had thought about it, but I don't think it's been brought up, is so we're working on a water park, and it's going to take a lot of water to fill that water park up.
Build.
Yeah. So it's just something to think about also.
That's all metered, right, Jay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that.
Yeah, but if you're charging different tiers, and you're saying, oh, the commercial businesses, we want them to be the loser here. We're going to be the loser too by filling the water park up also. If you're doing flat fees, it is what it is.
But we were pumping it from the bay.
Okay, I'll thank you. Thank you for letting me wait, because I really didn't want to skew it, because I want to give everybody an opportunity to say. So there's a few things I would. Yes, the water park is the highest user at almost 3 times the second highest user, which is Rod and Reel. So 1.2 million gallons roughly. So
It was the highest user with all the water leaks.
Yeah, well, we're still going to
3
see
times.
I mean, you go in a pool, you got to refill it up every week anyways, because you lose like a half inch or something like that a week or every other week. So, there's going to be water loss no matter what. That's a lot of water that the town would then inherently be taxing itself on. So I have a few perspectives, Lori. I think you'll like some of them. I think you'll probably disagree with some of them. But to your rock analogy as well, I don't concur with that one, in the sense of I understand the argument of capacity and using the system and wear and tear, but there's also an argument to be made that we need high users throughout the day, because with residential, you have peaks and valleys. So you have peaks in the morning and you have peaks in the evening, and there's not as much sustained throughput, and you need those users who are pushing water to the plants throughout the day. And that's where our business is, and that's where Rod and Reel and the water park and everybody's going to continue to push that through the system to keep a healthy flow system. I couldn't have made that argument a few months ago. I've been so knee deep into the functionings of a proper water and sewer and treatment plants and all this other stuff that that's kind of where I've landed on why it's important to have high users. as well. And then to your point earlier, it is inherent that businesses would be in the water park specifically would be on that high tier. So I'm not sure we would even need a commercial tier just because inherently after so many gallons, they would fall. So here's what I thought about New Gen's report. I appreciated what they did. I think they validated some of the stuff that we had. My problems with the New Gen report is the council hadn't come to a conclusion on where we are, and that's what Samilia was talking about last week. So they based their entire report off of the 2025 budget, and we are a split council on, I said a few months ago, it's either none, some, or all, right? That's what we have to figure out on people costs when it comes to this. So they did it based off of what is fully in there today. So when you look, and then the other piece was reducing rates on the lowest users. So inherently what that translated to was lower fixed fees, and it's not much. It's like 30 something dollars a quarter. So we're talking $10 a month, lower fixed fees. But if you look at the tiered pricing, and John, I know you were talking about, you kind of like where they're going. I will say I don't like where they're going at all. Because when you get into like their tiers of 15,000 gallons or more, they're almost $4 per 1,000 gallons higher. Like their rates because you have to make up that operating expense somewhere. So if you cut fixed fees, which every $5 in fixed fees cuts about $54,000 in tier revenue that we have to generate somewhere else. So, you think 30, six times 50,000, you got to make up for that in the rates. So again, while I appreciate what they did, I think they were going off of skewed information because we collectively, we didn't give them like our stance. And I don't think we gave them our stance because I think we're still stuck on what our stance is. And that's what we have to figure out over the next handful of months because we're going to hit the budgeting cycle here come March timeframe. I do, after a lot of thought, and listening to New Gen and a lot of research and talking about enterprise funds and sustainability and self-sustaining, I do agree that we have to somehow account for the people costs to an extent. I'm not sold that it's the full amount that's in there today. Me and Samilia were talking about that earlier. I don't know what the amount should be. I played around with I'll be very transparent. I played around with 200,000 in the model I was playing with, and I have no logic to that. It just seemed about half of what's in there right now, and then saying like, I would like to understand. So trying to compromise a little bit and meet in the middle of where Lori you are and Eric where you are is where I kind of just said, hey, this is a fair number in my mind that I can play with. When I look at stability versus variability, the town is very adamant that we're a no new build. Minus some of the conversations with Richfield Station and the developer, we shouldn't be thinking about revenue through capital connections. So if you're gonna have the infrastructure in place so that when you turn the tap water on, water comes out, when you flush the toilet, the water goes away. You have to have that consistent infrastructure in place. So to do that, I lean heavily into stable revenue. And I think actually the more, if you would have talked to me 6 months ago, or even when I first got in the office, we started having these conversations, I was a big proponent of the personnel costs is what drove the rates. However, after digging more and more and more and listening to New Gen and having conversations with everybody, I actually think it's way more deeper than that. We weren't prepared from a rates perspective on future infrastructure costs. So Lori, I'll give you a lot of credit. You said we keep transferring funds, and I kept arguing with you, and I was like, yeah, but why are we transferring funds? And in reality, it came as we never had a savings account. We were never planning for our future infrastructure investments in advance, knowing that some of this is coming. Now, there's an argument to be made that you should be taking loans out on it because current users should be paying for it versus, or whoever uses it should be paying for it, not people who are paying for it now. There's an argument for that, but we weren't investing. And that was a best practice that New Gen did say that we should be incorporating into our tiers, is that we're preparing to have some revenue saved. So when you add in that, you add in personnel costs, you add in our debts, what we should have been doing. And I will give the past administration some credit. They weren't wrong for increasing rates. They were wrong for increasing the rates and the approach that they took. We needed to increase rates, but the rates didn't need to be a $50 in 2023 and then a 48% on tiers in 2024. It should have been a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year plan to increase rates and then have an actual process in place to make sure that we are where we need to be to have a stable infrastructure. So I will share as we continue the conversation. I will just kind of, say that the perspective I've taken is I lean more towards the fixed fees because that is the access to the infrastructure. What you use is, to your point, that's the cost that you take. So the variables is where you'll see that increase. I think inherently, no matter what, higher end users are going to see a somewhat perceived larger discount on their bills, but in reality, it's just economy of scale. You use 100,000 gallons, you're gonna, and we keep the rates at a lower, like you're gonna see a different rate or a different savings than somebody who uses 2,000 gallons just because economy of scale. I mean, that is really just a simple math problem. So I think that we have to do it too. Still think we have to figure out the people cost. And again, I'm just one of 6, so I gave my perspective. I do agree with expanding the tiers out. When I was playing around with it, I was at, instead of 4, 8, and 15, I was at 9, 18, and 27. And I just did those numbers because it was divisible by 3. And I just went 9, 18, 27. So, but that's kind of where I landed. I will share my I have played with the numbers and came out with like a potential proposal, but I was not in a place to share it because there's still a lot of logic that I'm convincing myself as I'm talking as well. So there's still a lot of logic that I have to talk through.
I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
So I would just ask that you either add tiers or string them out even a little further with a definitive trigger at a very high user.
Yeah, I didn't go that route.
All of your tiers still are in the realm of families.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
Are you saying something higher than 27, like expanding it?
I'm saying you have a trigger for residential users.
Okay.
And in that scenario where all the triggers are within what a residential would be, you're actually getting punished for having kids. Sometimes a pool, sometimes whatever, but
Jamie's got.
essentially there is no commercial triggers or very, very high user triggers that can help with the system. And then I would like us to look at if the way that we set up our system can accommodate it, that the first tier of user, their fixed fee covers their use. So yes, you have a fixed fee. I think that we should have a fixed fee, and I don't even mind if we don't reduce them. But if we could also account for their first X amount of gallons of water within that fixed fee, now they're not also getting charged for the water. Ability to turn on the water, plus it accounts for X amount of gallons.
I've heard you say this before, and I think I like this idea, but let me just clarify what you're saying. You're saying that you would like a fixed fee that goes towards your bill as you use it. But if you don't use it, your fixed fee is your fixed fee. But if you're using it, then it goes towards your bill. So essentially, you're not having, so essentially the only people that are really getting a fixed fee are the people who aren't using any water.
Second homes.
Right, they're.
I like that
they're-
idea.
They have access.
So
And it
that's,
should be a
so-
low amount, so you'd still get charged if you used above that amount.
I mean, you're essentially eliminating the fixed fee except for people who don't use any water.
Essentially, yes, for a certain amount, you
That-
have to play with how much water that is.
Yeah, so I ran some of those numbers too. It's a it is a hefty cost. So again, I'm not against either. I ran every scenario that we've been talking about this for like a year plus. So every scenario, we can keep playing with the numbers for sure. Cause I'm not against it either. I was just really trying to find the balance that hits what everybody has talked about here, and how to make sure I really just focused on stability.
I haven't
That's-
looked at this thing, but if anybody would like to show it to me, I would be happy to look at it.
I mean, one thing you touched on is the large families, I grew up, I'm one of 6 siblings, So I know large families, it's always hard and things like that, and things are always stressed. So that's where it is being mindful to making sure we're not too punitive on it, but then it's also, if we go to what a large family would use, it's only 1 or 2 people on usage after that. I think after 39,000 gallons or something like that, there's hardly any users after that. So
That's what I'm saying. The tiers should maybe start after 39,000.
I
something like that.
36,000.
36. Yeah.
but then we're targeting somebody, and I don't think we should do that. I think we should have numbers based on whatever other systems go. I don't know. I want to make sure we're not trying to focus on I want it to just be universal. And like I've given an example where it's like, man, I want to be considerate, but we also have to it's for everybody that we have to look at. What's the policy for everybody? The numbers, we could just base it on the numbers, not on this is about this person or that business, even as much as I want to be like the heartstrings for larger families, you know what I mean? It's just, we have to look at it, the fairness
So
to everybody.
in fairness, so nobody's targeting anybody. I don't know how many times I can possibly say that, but it is the truth. But if you have every tier down at the residential level, you're essentially targeting residential people. If you're going to say you're targeting anybody at all, and that's why I'm saying we need to string these tiers out so that they impact people based on the wear and tear of the system.
So add the
The-
4th tier and make it a little more squished. And don't
So
yeah, you know what
I'll
I'm saying?
work with every council member with the models. I think now that we have the intent, I will still go back to Eric's point earlier about the water park being it's 800,000 gallons more than the highest second user. So any tiers over a certain amount, we're literally just taxing back ourselves as the town's highest
Subsidizing.
user. Yeah, we would
Right,
be
we're still
subsidizing.
recouping.
Yeah. So there's some conversation. I did want to point out one thing, and Jay, I'll say this because I think I hear what you were saying when it comes to the people costs and
I got big shoulders. Go for
okay.
it.
I heard what you said about the DCE and the other organization. I'm sure they're overly bloated in a lot of those spaces. I don't know what the math comes up to, but I don't, having spent 20 years in the government work, I would be shocked if it's not excessively bloated, especially in the DC area. That said, I think where I always get stuck on the people costs is and I was talking to Sam about this earlier, is I don't understand the people costs because, like, for example, last council meeting, we approved, was it like not Tyler Technology as our water company, but there was another company that's got a similar name, and they do work when Public Works can't do it. And I had asked the question, like, is this parts only or is this parts and labor? What is this? So I think there's some convoluted pieces of the puzzle of who's doing what, when, and what it is. Because when I look at it, I just see the percentages of the people costs equals about 2 full-time people year round, a little over 4,000 hours, which, 2080 is the standard number. So roughly 2 full-time people. And are they truly doing that? And if the answer is yes, then hey, we need to address it and go. But I think it's just been an interesting conversation when we look at all the facts as they come together of that. So I don't distrust you. From Missouri, the show me, show me. So,
I can appreciate that.
Well, I think what's really important to move forward is that everybody comes to terms with exactly what they want so that we can actually get to a solution. There's so many different variables right now, so many different threads that we're not succinct on anything, which means that we brought in new gen and we didn't say we want this to happen or this to happen or this to happen. Show us how we get there. And if that's the case, we can end up doing this over and over again and then having our tail between our legs come March. So we need to really get succinct about what we want to do as a council and what we want this to look like going forward.
So I agree. And what I would request is that for the December work session, you all come with some tiers that you want to discuss, right? Not theoretical tiers, but just like, not those kind of tiers either. So we can put it up on the screen and then everyone can talk through it. We can beforehand work with Dan. So we make sure that the numbers all work out. And then I think that's a step in the right direction. You do.
Makes sense to me. Get it together, get your logic.
Study?
You'll have at least 2 months of it. And so that's something, right? The idea was that it was going to be 3 months. So technically you won't have all of that data until January, the end of January.
That brought up in December.
I would love to do it in January.
I have a suggestion as well. Can we set up like a 1 hour block with somebody that's familiar with the proposal so we can play with the numbers?
I will argue that no matter what you do with that model, you are not going to achieve the intent that you're trying to do. I promise you.
It's a rabbit hole.
It is a rabbit
Yeah.
hole. What I would commit
Oh.
to is I will meet with every single person to show them like what I've been, because I had to break the model in order to get the model to produce the results that we collectively are talking about. Even working with, and NewGen did not concur with me breaking their model. However, it was a necessary evil to do that. And then, but I do think, like to your point in December, I think while we can have the conversation of what the final numbers look like based off of studies and stuff, I think we do need to continue the conversation of, if we're going to include stuff in the first tier and if we're going to expand out to 36 or 39, those things we could start working towards now. So in January, we're not trying to piece it all together at that one. And we can maybe do
Work
chunks.
through December.
Yes. Yeah.
Do it.
Chunks of it.
Can I ask one question? Is that 3-month study my timekeeping study we're looking for?
It includes that.
Okay.
Yes.
It's because I'll be honest, as Eric spoke to it, it is an incredibly hard thing to track because it's not like we're all at the end of the day sitting around and say, hey guys, what did everyone do today? And I'll give you an example. We probably get 30 calls from town hall every day. Mrs. So-and-so swears her daughter moved out and they didn't use enough water. And so we respond due to a water bill. Did we charge that to the utility system? We didn't work on the infrastructure, but we spent an hour with Miss So-and-so and then she didn't realize where her clean out was at. So there are so many pieces that we're not really charging, but they're true utility costs. And for me to figure out at the end of the day, when you task so-and-so to do whatever, you add in all the other things, you're splitting minutes, right? On the way to go the trash run, you're going to go bleed off this hydrant because of a low chlorine count or something. So it's like, I'll be honest, it's incredibly hard to track hourly to do it. I don't mind doing it, but what that's going to do, we're all going to sit down at the end of the day for an hour and write a list.
It's an impossible thing to quantify.
Mhm.
And so
generally,
we'll just need to decide what number we're comfortable with, if we're comfortable with a number at all. And that's going to be what we want the rates to be. It's going to be working backwards on that. So, I mean,
And I don't want to not respond. I've been tasked with a task and I will do it, but I will say and I will invite anybody on this council, any day you want, come to Public Works, sit at my desk one day and follow me around, or any of my guys for one day. It's just, we do
It's
it.
all over the place.
If it happens outside of the fence of the water treatment plant in this town, my phone rings. I mean, from a tree to a citizen to a dog this guy left his bike it's just, I can't even fathom it myself. And to try to track it, I'm just saying, it's an astronomical task. It baffles my mind to think about it. I'm just being honest.
So Jay,
Hey, can't you tell us how you really feel?
I just did. Thank you. I feel better already.
Soon, Jeff.
one more thing to do. And we pay for it no matter what fund it comes from. So,
But
to reiterate,
I do want to be helpful in any way I can. And I appreciate all the debate and all the angles. I like the diversity and you're looking at so many different things. I'm in favor of everyone because you're looking at and I like it, but I want to be part of it. But I'll be honest, that's a daunting task.
okay, so just could you were giving the example of WSSC, and I do not think we should be ignoring that. And when you gave the example that for a system our size, are you talking about just for the water sewer lines? They would have 16 full-time employees.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. And I can give you some statistics if that's helpful, different utilities. And I do agree, right? We're in Washington DC, that's unique and it's inflated and I've been there. We take some of our classes there. So I will tell you, yes, it's like NASA. There's 3 people at every desk. But realistically, if you just did the time that we have, it would be 12 employees for us if we did nothing else. And that's your typical municipal
And I
government.
believe you.
But I can, if that's helpful, I'll pull 3 different municipal governments that own 3 water towers in the Silver System and show you what they have.
I would have, if you're going to do that, Jay, pull the entire thing, the entire structure of that, so you can show how that's not apples and apples. For us to be compared to WSSC, there's nothing we can do to compare apples to apples. I've done a little bit of work.
Right.
We are no way in shape or form anything like that. We could use that as a guide to show how much we are not. But what about if you take some of the items, like you gave an example about calling out there, and we have a definitive tasks that you did, and the definitive tasks that you did were utility. So replacing meters, task codes that are replacing meters. So moving forward in years to come, you say, nope, these are my definitive tasks, and these definitive tasks are the labor. So we have an audit system in place. So it's not just, I said so, we have what tasks that are done that are associated with utility work. Something along, something.
I'll get some SOPs for the 13. There's a lot of maintenance in these wet wells, and I invite any of y'all to go with me when we PM one any day. There's so much stuff. I mean, I could fill out a list and present it, and I should probably with pictures. That's a whole nother day at my desk. And I'm not trying to bitch, but there's so much going on that it's hard to track and give you. But I will definitely be a lot simpler for me to pull all these other entities together, give you a graph, show you some things, and it would be to try to track 8 different guys' times every day and everything utility fund versus
Well, and I
the
think,
general fund.
the comparison to WSSC is just completely invalid. I mean, the scale of WSSC compared to our scale is astronomical. But I would say that what occurs to me as this discussion is going forward is that maybe some of our fellow municipalities
That's right.
throughout the rest of the state might have a more similar model to us, and it would be good to make a comparison there as opposed to try to do something on, a real large scale versus a small scale like we are.
And I have no problem gathering. I can gather all that information. You take what you feel is applicable, right? Because obviously we're not WSSC.
Could I make a, so I'm very much with Eric on that. Like this could be a huge time suck. And then we actually just absorbed a significant cost for you to do that. Because every time you spend tracking stuff, there's a cost associated with that. I'm of the perspective of if you are short on manpower right now to perform the work, then we know that we are undermanned. If you are not, then we need to look at supplemental personnel. And then I would also ask the question of, have we looked at cross-training any of our treatment plant personnel to support if they're not doing something there? A big believer of, and I don't know if that's a no, but I
would say it's a no for the shared costs because they'd be working on our infrastructure and their shared costs against our interjurisdictional agreement. But
okay.
And I'm not into the weeds. I just want to provide you with accurate information so you can make decisions. So let me gather this information. I can give it to you at a high level. If you want more depth or you want to go one way or the other, I'll help provide whatever I can to give you similarities. And the truth is, if we go out and you had all this data, does that mean we're good and quick at what we do? I'll be honest, we've missed a few PMs because of everything that's happening now, right? We're behind on some preventative maintenance, and we may get away with it, we may not, but
Yeah.
it's hard to quantify.
The other thing that I want to add to that is considering our capital improvement projects and how much that requires Jay's guys to do that. So when you're looking at the real costs, it's likely when they start to be pulled into those other projects that we're going to need additional support to be responsive to the utility fund needs. So that's something to just be mindful of, specifically when we go into the budget planning process. I won't go into too much detail about it because it involves personnel things, but understanding that in order for us to do all of the things that you all want us to do, we will likely need more people to do it, right? So whether it's 3 people at 50% or 6 people at 25%, the number is the same. So you just have to be mindful. The overall number is the same. The second clarifying question I have is, what I hear is that you are understanding the cost and the time suck it is to do these time allocation studies. Are you all saying you do not want that data moving forward from the?
I would like to speak to that.
Sure.
I think that what we need to do is decide what we want the rates to be first. Start there. And then the math will work itself out as far as what the expenses have to be in order for the rates to be what we want them to be. So in the end game, if we're working backwards like that, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what amount of time you're doing this and doing that. I wouldn't waste your time blowing the tops of your skulls off trying to figure that out. I mean, I really think that's the way we need to do it. What do we want the rates to be? And that will determine what the expenses will be, and that will determine the number we're going to use as far as the people number.
That's not budgeting.
We don't agree as a council as far as if all of those or any of those or part of those people costs should be in the expenses, 1. And 2, it's completely impossible to get a real number as far as what those hours are for the people costs. And they'd have to be tracked every minute of every day of every year and readjusted every budget cycle in order to try to attempt to be accurate if you think they belong in there. Well, philosophically, I don't even think they belong in there.
But we're paying for them anyway. So now, one way or the other, taxpayers are paying for these people. The operating costs do not disappear. They're not going to disappear. This utility system is the most critical thing that the town has. And for it to be understaffed and not managed properly and not really quarantined from the rest of the budget, we lack the ability to budget for the entire town. And we run into problems where we just had, where we have to spend $3.5 million of ARPA funds to fix water lines that are going to break. And if our system gets even bigger and we continue to take this approach, it's going to be even worse because the general fund won't ever even cover the need for the people that are going to repair this very critical system. So we would be doing everybody an enormous favor by getting this system under control and managed properly, and disappearing costs to make people like their rates, especially when we have some very high users that can easily afford a rate increase. I just find it very negligent.
Okay. Why don't we move on to another topic?
Mayor, can I say one thing though?
I guess so. Do you
Thank
get the
you.
last word?
I appreciate that. Us saying what we want really doesn't have anything to do with what we're asking you. If we know what the rates are that we want, if we know how we want to collectively go by this or separately go by this, we need to put that information out there. It needs to get to our town administrator. It needs to get to New Gen. We have to have a goal. I mean, Jay, if you do it, that's fine. But if we don't have a goal, we're really just blowing smoke right now. We need to have goals in place so that we can know what we're going after, so we can know what the end game is. If not, we just walking around in circles and we having 45-minute conversations without having any actionable items or goals on us to say that's what we want to get to. We need to start talking about what we want the rates to look like. We need to look at the variable differences of what we want to do with the salaries. And we need to put those things on the table so that we can make an actual decision and get this wrapped up.
So my goal, I will state it right now, is a realistic, self-sustaining enterprise fund.
Cool.
And I agree with that.
I like having the 4 tiers like Jamie was getting at, and lowering rates for anybody under 18,000 gallons.
All right, let's move on. Let's see, we juggled the agenda around. Where do we want to go? Where do you think we should go now? Should we go back up to,
So we can,
Land use?
all right, Jamie,
Oh, yes.
we'll go to the land use table. And again, we've, because of Sarah not being here when we started, we've juggled things around. We're going to try and get back on track here.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for being able to come. I appreciate it. So I saw that and I had asked that we just title this in the agenda land use table, because all of this is ultimately going to fall under land use or areas within was it 290 of our code. So looking at this, accessory dwelling units. Obviously, that is a hot conversation here, but Maryland just recently introduced some new legislation that is focused on promoting accessibility to housing because of the housing challenges. And when I started looking at where we sit in comparison to North Beach or the county and other areas, the numbers vary. We're 650 square foot. You, depending on where you're at, you get upwards of 1,000, 1,200. I think North Beach is 800 or 850. Calvert County, I think, is like a 900 or 1,000. So I don't know what the right number is. I could arbitrarily just make up a number and say this is good, but I don't know what that actually looks like. That falls into that space. Also, when I was looking at this, short-term rentals has been a conversation that has come up in the past that I don't think has ever been truly addressed. And when I looked at the code to understand where short-term rentals exist, it's really just a definition in the code that says anything under 30 days is considered, is not allowed. And then, so when you go look at the tables, and I'll share this with you as well later, but when you look at the tables, or you might have already seen I sent an email and you might have already seen it, but when you look at the tables, it ties back into that definition and not allowing that. So I think that collectively the council, again, needs to make a determination of whether we're interested in that or not. And then the third one was the home-based businesses. And I've had personal experiences with this. We've talked about this a lot because I think in the current economic situation going on with a lot of folks, like, we shouldn't be hampering the ability of small home-based businesses. And when you look at what a home-based business definition, it really is like a family that lives in there. It's typically restricted to the family members. There is oftentimes, like, you could have maybe one employee that comes in, but they have to use your parking space because parking always seems to come up. And I know we'll talk about as like this big factor that needs to be addressed. But in reality, a home-based business is typically, you don't even know it's there. You would never know it's there. It's done in the basement or in a special room. It's a craft room or in the garage, and it's that. So I think we should be aligning with like allowing cottage businesses, the crafters in the community should be able to make crafts and sell crafts. If they want to have like a little e-commerce or something, we should be encouraging small businesses within the house instead of negating them. So I put this all in there, and my actual plan, so the council is tracking, is by Maryland state law, we have to allow planning and zoning an opportunity to weigh in on any changes that we would make to a change to the land use table. However, state law does not dictate how long that they have to make those recommendations. So I do wholeheartedly want the recommendations of planning and zoning, but I also think that we need to time box it to an extent, and we need to figure out what those times are. So next week during the actual council meeting, and I've shared this with Smelia, is I would like to make a motion to officially refer it to planning and zoning to start looking at comprehensively the entire land use table. However, with some specific guidance to look at those three: ADUs, short-term rentals, and home-based businesses, and then come up with a time box window that they would provide a response. And what that does is that allows us an opportunity to say, you know, if they're going to take, if it would need a year, we could say, well, you have 90 days to provide a response, and we've given them time to do that. If we get a response, that's great. If we don't, we have met the Maryland state law requirements, and we can make a decision of a council if we want to adjust the land use table. I say that collectively as I have looked at, I cannot believe, maybe I'll come work with you. I cannot believe the amount of land use tables I've stared at over the last little bit. And ours is very, very arduous. We have a low density, a medium density, a high density. We have like numerous categories for housing that, I mean, we're all kind of crammed in here anyways. I'm not really sure I understand wholeheartedly the differences, because when I go look at North Beaches, their land use table is pretty simple to follow. Very, very simple to follow. And so you may have like, there may be some like legit reasons why ours is not, but I mean, we're the Twin Beaches. Our footprint looks very similar when you drive through it, when it comes to how, you know, the closeness of the homes and stuff. So I just think probably, and I'm inferring here, that this probably hasn't been touched wholeheartedly from a whole, it was probably put together 40 years ago or something like that. And we just really haven't done a comprehensive review on it, and how can we streamline it and make it better? So that's my plan. That's why I asked it to be all under one, because it kind of, in the code, it all falls in the same space.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so if I can just provide some background. So with your Planning and Zoning Commission, one of their main charges, and Councilwoman Blackwelder is nodding, she knows this, is to draft and put together your comprehensive plan, which is your 20-year plan. That was completed in 2022. Am I right?
Was adopted.
And so after that was adopted, that's when you do the comprehensive rezoning. So
The zoning happened in 2022.
okay, so it was 2021.
It was 2021. that the
2021.
comprehensive plan was done.
So then the next step is that they look at the entire zoning ordinance and adjust it to be in alignment with the comprehensive plan, because that's a state requirement. So whatever happens with the zoning ordinance, it still has to align with the adopted comprehensive plan. So that is a lot of why there are so many land use categories in the land use table, with the residential village areas. And the table is built on what already existed, right? So there were categories that were added, there were categories that were taken away because of the home-based business issue that has come up. I have spoken with the Planning Commission, and they actually spoke about the land use table at the last meeting. I think they're hoping to finish getting through it at the next meeting, but they do have a guest, so we'll see. Let's see, something happened. I can't say what because I wasn't here. From the comprehensive plan to the zoning recommendations to the zoning being adopted in the land use table specifically. And there's pieces that don't make sense with regard to the comprehensive plan. And don't know if it was a column error or it was a general error or decisions were made. I can't say. But I have taken both the old and the new land use table, put them together, compared all of the changes in uses, and analyzed for consistencies with the comprehensive plan. So that is what the Planning Commission is looking at right now. ADUs are in there because the state does have new legislation, and you will be required to either change your parking requirement or have a parking study done. And so that has to be addressed. So definitely these are all things worth looking at and making sure they're consistent with the comprehensive plan. An overhaul of the zoning ordinance isn't something that is restricted. It just has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. That makes sense.
No, that's super helpful, and so I appreciate that. And maybe we need to piecemeal some of this back together. So, and it wasn't meant to be like I don't think we can get, there's 60 rows, so I don't think we can get through all 60 rows, and that's not realistic. And it does need, now that you use the alignment to the comprehensive plan, I would look at Lori and say, what the hell did y'all do a couple years ago, because it's so regulated. I'm dead serious that our land use table is excessively regulatory. So I don't understand. I don't think I understand. And I'll go back and read the comprehensive plan, but like what the objective was in the comprehensive plan to drive such a regulated land use table.
So can I respond?
Sure.
When we started comprehensive planning, we had one section that basically covered the entire town called the RV.
Mhm.
And the RV allowed everything under the sun at very high densities. Well, the RV had very different areas in it. There's a neighborhood here. There's a lot of vacant land, very much lower density area here. There's some commercial mixed use stuff here. It encompassed everything in town. And the Planning Commission said, well, we want to direct growth a little bit better than this, because somebody could just buy 4 lots in the middle of this neighborhood, build it up X amount of feet, put whatever they want under it, and now the neighborhood's completely changed in character. So, and then within that, and we're seeing this on council now, there's 6 people. And we're making motions, and we're, making compromises and back and forth, and this is what you have. I will say with the land use table, we did not spend a lot of time in the table, and I have seen things in the table that we did not look at. So I think it is appropriate to visit those items that, Sarah, I've seen your commission agendas. I do think it would be a good idea to let Sarah take the lead on what we address and in what order. I think she has a good handle on things, and we'll address the most egregious things first. Like I was disappointed we never added food trucks. I think the center of town would be a great place for some food trucks, but we never did. And there's a lot of things like that in there. We really just didn't get to it. We ended up being under, so much pressure for this and that. And then the council in turn was under the same amount of pressure.
So the only, I don't mean to capitalize all the time. The only thing I'll say is I'm still going to make a motion next week. And the reason I'm going to make that is just because it's a formality tied to Maryland state law, so that it does give us the ability, if we decide that we want to change something, and as long as it is aligned with the comprehensive plan, that the council has met state law to do that. So it's just, all it is referring thoughts back to planning and zoning to assess it.
To ask them
yes,
to
to ask them
recommend
to
a
make a
table to
recommendation.
us.
Yes. And again, like I said, it calls for a comprehensive review, but it still is just, I think there's some logic, and we can write that into the motion to make sure it's not like, hey, Sarah, I need all of this on day one. That's not the expectation, but I do, and I was joking I was partially joking when I said, what the hell did you do? But I really do think, like, I understand that based off of the conversation, the intent, I do think that we over-indexed heavily on regulation that's then just having secondary and tertiary impacts across residents that probably were never thought of, but
I
and-
agree, and that's probably true.
and maybe what you're talking about is, I'm assuming, is the 2024 changes in the land use table that just seem to be a little contradicting to the current one. I don't know if that's the time frame you're thinking, but in my research, when I found some archived land use tables, there was some changes that were awkwardly, interestingly different.
So I would say,
There was just
There shouldn't have been
there was some
any-
discrepancies in some of the documents that were found in archives versus what was posted on the actual E-code, which is originally raised my attention of, like, why would we do this or why would we do that? And then the code is different.
Yeah, there shouldn't have been any land use tables in 2024, and I'm looking at Councilman
I'm sorry,
Flack. There shouldn't have been any changes to the land use table in 2024.
there shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
That's correct. There should not
So-
have been.
I will have to,
Yeah.
I'd be interested
Yeah.
to see what you found. I do just want to say one thing is, there's 60, there's a lot of or rows. Sometimes there's a use that doesn't have a row. And it's like, so more rows actually can provide more clarity for people. I think your concern, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like more about the columns, or maybe some of the rows are duplicative.
Yes, yeah. So I think it would be columns that are restricting certain things that we would probably want to be open to, and duplicative in the nature of, like, you might want to, I'll give the easiest example. I think it's row 55 excludes cabinetry work. I understand, like, we don't want somebody who's running like their full kitchen and bath home makeovers out of their garage, but some guy that's just building a cabinet for somebody, or some shelving that they're going to go install in the side job and it's in their garage. Like that's the type of stuff, and they're there. You can see them on Facebook Marketplace who's making this stuff, and, like, we should be encouraging
I
those.
agree with
Yeah.
that home occupation.
Yeah. So maybe it's more like you said,
Yeah.
it's breaking some of this up to be really, like, transparent. Like, there's no cottage law one, like, very open about this. My kids have a cottage law business, and we've talked about this, right? The town doesn't allow it. So, like, why would we want any cottage business to not? It's allowed by the state. It's allowed by the county. You have very specific rules and regulations. Like, we should encourage all of that.
So when it comes to zoning, I would like to ask that we do not do what was done previously, and things get slow rolled and steamrolled, and then you end up with a bunch of weird code. So I just ask the council that we go slow, methodically, and we communicate, because there's a lot of things that come up last minute, and zoning is not something that should be done with, because there is a legal implication. And there is, unlike, the bike slow that doesn't really have an enforceability. Zoning has a very big impact on people's lives and their investments, and it's not something to do the way that we've done some things on council. So I hope that we can communicate. We have our lawyer, our planner, everybody we need present when we talk about zoning, and that we have enough time to the information that we need.
Yeah. So I would say, like, help meet me in the middle somewhere there. Like, if there's things that we know, like some of the examples I
Oh, I'm
provide
good
that are
with your
easy,
occupation, for sure.
low hanging fruits, like, let's go that. And then the other ones where we need to be methodical, all for it.
Yep, agree.
All right. Let's move on to planning and zoning ordinances in review, backyard hens, not chickens, hens.
Finally.
Who's going to take that? Sarah?
Alcoholic.
So you guys have before you the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to allow backyard. It says chickens in the ordinance, but we can change it to hens as a conditional use in your residential zones. And this is subject to certain requirements that can be applied by zoning. And so this is all the piece that zoning can give you in allowing household hens, right? This is what zoning can regulate. It will be number 65 on the land use table. It will be a conditional use. Conditional uses can be approved by staff as long as they meet the conditions. The thing is that if you decided to just adopt this, you still wouldn't be able to have chickens, hens in town because you have other pieces of the code that aren't zoning code that restrict chickens. And, you know, in your discussion, you may want to engage in regulating in other pieces of your code that aren't planning and zoning. And your lawyer will be the person to advise you on that.
So has anybody, I have not seen this code.
You don't have it?
Don't have it.
Oh,
This one?
you want me? It's
Isn't
very
it a
short.
That's
I-
a resolution to address it, but I don't see the
Oh,
actual
well,
code.
It's short. I
Oh.
can read it for you.
Attached zoning text amendment.
Well, look,
I didn't get it.
it wasn't included in the package. I was just going to give you a brief overview about it. This is here.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So the land use table just shows it as a conditional use in all your residential zones. And the conditions are: 1, the principal dwelling shall be a single-family detached dwelling. 2, coops and runs are not permitted to project into the minimum yard setbacks as defined in 290-19A, which is where your setbacks are. Up to 4 hens are permitted per dwelling. Coops or runs may not enter any front yard. Coops and runs must be fully enclosed. That's all. Those are all the zoning conditions.
There's no space conditions. There's no.
So we don't regulate the HOA. So if even though it's permitted, if your HOA says it's not permitted, it doesn't matter that the town says it's allowed. You won't be able to have them because the HOA says no. We can't regulate the HOA.
There's no lot size parameters in that code.
I can have chickens.
The Planning and Zoning Commission discussed lot size parameters and ultimately decided not to put any lot size parameters.
Every single house in Chesapeake Beach can have.
Well, they have to be single family. They can't permit into they can't project into the required yards. So most accessory uses can project into your side yard or your rear yard. So the rear yard setback is 20 feet. And then your side yard setbacks are 8 feet. So that's going to limit a lot of the smaller lots.
For me, I don't think this is urgent, and I would be happy to give it plenty of time and socialize it, especially since we're talking about every single house in Chesapeake Beach. Even Calvert County is regulating everything to 1 acre. So it's, you know, that can be some very close chickens. Again, I think I'm curious how this got prioritized over, say, coastal resiliency and some of Jamie's concerns, but
I think it's because the county, or right?
So the county brought it forward and it is little, right? It's not majorly time consuming. And so we could do it alongside of signs. We were looking at signs. And so this came along and I was like, we can do both of these things and still get through these projects. So now coastal resiliency is the big project. land use table, not that land use table is little, but it's the one we're doing alongside it. And so it's trying to manage getting the big projects done while fixing some of the smaller things. And so that's how it came forward.
You also don't need a ton of space for hens.
For what?
You don't need it, because I think are you in your mind thinking like you just need a massive amount of space for these?
No, I'm
hens?
just
'Cause-
thinking that there is noise, there is, I would be interested to know,
Well, you won't have it because your HOA is going to allow it.
issues with that amount of space, how, I don't know the behavior of hens or what the upkeep of hens would be, but I can imagine that if you had a lot of hens and say you had a block full of users that didn't really feel like cleaning up after those hens, you have a problem. So I don't think this is
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not going to be
type
able to.
of thing.
Right. So this was discussed extensively on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And what I told them is yes, but that's not in 290, right? So that's not under Planning and Zoning's authority. And so they've done the piece that's under their authority. And the discussion you are starting to have now is the discussion that now falls to the council
Right.
to
So
have.
while it's a
Yes.
small project for you,
Right,
it's
yes,
no
it
small
is.
project for us. And so I don't know that I'm inclined to race towards approving hens without a little bit of research input, definitely a public hearing or two. So, we can talk about hens for all 4 years for all I care.
There's only 3 left.
Or 3, yeah, sorry. Yeah. I don't think it's an urgent matter. I think it's worth looking at, but it's not something that we should do flippantly.
Eric?
Well, as I do appreciate your concern, I can tell you that it was during my last term when Bruce was mayor and I sat in this same chair. We both sat in the same chairs. Is when we passed the prohibition of hens. And from the day before we passed it to the day after we passed it, I didn't notice any change in town at all.
Okay.
That's a good point. That's a good
I
point.
never saw any hens before. I never saw any hens later.
Well,
So-
that explains how it came back to council, because you're here.
No. I mean, I do appreciate the idea of being able to have hens.
It's because of Eric and me that, it came back
So
to
glad you guys are here to.
Well, with the cost of eggs, I mean,
But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to do is address your concern by saying that I and it's just my opinion and based on past experiences, but I don't see, an influx of thousands of hens coming to town.
Well,
Yeah, I think the town's.
I'm outvoted on many cases. I don't intend to vote yes without more input, so
This
my
conversation
feelings are now
mirrors.
known.
The conversation mirrors the Planning and Zoning Commission conversation. They were relieved to know that they don't have the authority to make the decision. And so you guys will be the ones that have to do that.
Sarah, is there any negative impact to planning and zoning if we table this for now?
No,
Okay.
you have what you would need from them and you should put it on your agenda as works with your other priorities.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just one other thing so the change to the land use table is one thing, but the other thing that we would need to do would be to eliminate the part of the code that we added years ago.
Well, I think it would be eliminate that part and then probably put some guidelines in there as well. So I think like to Lori's point of, you don't want chickens running wild. I mean, there's a solution. So like you got to have a fence, you have to have a fence yard or something along those lines. But I think that's all the pieces that we would have to.
The enclosed part covers that concern.
Oh, it does. Okay.
protects them too from foxes.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Those fox can jump high.
And speaking of fences, that's the next item on the agenda.
What a great segue.
So, yes, and Samelia nudged me and said, this is a great segue. So,
Yeah, good job.
Samelia, Jay, who wants to speak to this?
You want to start?
And Sarah?
I'll tell you what, I'll start with a real brief, my role, and then Sarah, who I trust wholeheartedly, can pick up. So when Sarah was contracted by the town, I didn't even know in our own code, the approval of fences actually falls under Public Works. I have never historically done that, and the onus is on me. I never read into it and realized it was me. It was always done prior by kind of planning and zoning, just unofficially, if you will. So when I was tasked with it last administration, I dived into it. It's my job, and I started looking at things. One thing is, it says specifically, no solid fences, no vinyl. Our code was written before there were vinyl fences, right? So when I am tasked with the very first, can I approve this fence? So I go on site and look, specifically says no solid white vinyl fence, it's supposed to be airflow. And both neighbors had existing fences, and I'm going to tell this person, no, you can't tie it in now. So I've used my discretion and said, yeah, technically the way the code's written, but times have changed, right? And there was another case where it's definitive, a backyard and a front yard have two different height requirements, right? You can have a tall fence in your backyard. For people that don't understand, the backyard is considered the midpoint of your house on either side back. It's not just the back, right? And there are some unique situations in town. Your backyard is your backyard, but if you happen to live on the corner lot, now you have a street facing, so that falls under a different rule, right? And there's been a few cases where this resident was allowed to have 6-foot fence, 6-foot fence, 6-foot fence, but this last piece. So I said, under my discretion, the way I see what I was authorized to do, you can have this last 8 feet of 6-foot tall fence in your backyard. I'm going to let Sarah pick it up from there, and then we'll go on.
And I've looked at these things, so.
Yes.
Jay, and so I think what he says makes a lot of sense.
And so some of it, I always look at safety. When I go out and look at safety, a right of ways, can the town access this thing? Just because you have a right of way in your backyard and you have a setback, you're cutting that grass, you're maintaining it, right? I'm a town citizen too. I look at it and say, hey, you can bring this fence a little here, make it square. That works. But keep in mind, if the town ever had to come in and remove this pipe, your fence is subject to removal. And I try to work with every citizen, right? Real world practicality. Those things are discretionary too. And it's all reviewed and we look at it because there are fences in town that were never permitted, and there's a lot of different situations in town. But I'm going to let Sarah pick it up from there.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Yeah, so your fence provisions are in your building code, not your zoning code. And so when I came in and they said, you have to approve this fence permit, I said, I don't have any authority to approve this fence permit. So that is how Jay got stuck making
thank you, Sarah.
that decision. So what it allows is a 42-inch fence that is made of chain link. You can do that without a permit. If you want to do anything else, you need to come to get approval from the Public Works Administrator. And there's not a lot of clarity for the Public Works Administrator as where the exceptions are. The two things that are clear is that it cannot be more than 6 feet and it cannot be in the front yard. And so that is what Jay has been using to move forward. Now, corner lots are a little different because they have 2 front yards, but also one of them is sort of a backyard, and that allows him to interpret the regulations and allow that fence on a corner lot. But there's no room for him to interpret the regulations to allow a tall fence in a front yard. And because it's not in the zoning code, but in the building code, it can't go to the Board of Appeals for a variance the way other regulations that are in the zoning code can. So there's sort of no relief for a resident who might have a unique situation on their lot. And that's the kind of thing, with Board of Appeals, you have a unique situation on your lot that's different from your neighbors, and then you can get a variance and be allowed to do something. So after all this discussion, we're recommending, and I've talked to Planning and Zoning about this, that we look at putting some fence regulations into the zoning code, because that gives people the ability to apply to Board of Appeals if they have a unique situation on their lot. It also, because you all are the appealing body for the building code, it also takes you out of, you have lots of other business to do. You don't necessarily want to be having people appeal Jay's decisions to you. And he is thoughtful about that. And so whenever he can work with someone to approve something, he works to do that. Sometimes he can't. And then you may be looking at people asking you to approve something that you really can't approve either. So that is tricky for you. And so I think moving it to the zoning code takes you out of that tricky situation, gives residents more ability to deal with unique situations on their lots. And so that is my recommendation.
Right. And until that happens,
Sorry.
no, you're perfect. Until that happens, there is a current case that is being appealed and will have to be heard.
Is
Yeah.
that the one we looked at?
Yes. Dated October 28th. And that is something that you all as a council will have to hear and make a decision on.
Actually, on Monday, me and Bruce rode around and we looked at this fence. And then we looked at a couple other fences. A lot of my neighbors in the section of town I live have 6-foot fences. And it's like, well, is that a front yard or backyard? Is that a front yard or backyard? And I was like, well, this guy didn't take a picture of that fence because that fence is really nice and it doesn't stand out. And I think this opens a very big can of worms. We looked at this home's fence and it seems that he's purchased everything, but
On the property.
it's on the property and he's doing a really good job to put it in, but it is, the front yard is that way. And I see what he's writing, but it is definitely doesn't feel, it's wow, how did this get to this?
Mhm.
For us? We have a Board of Appeals, and strange that it just has fallen that way. So, I mean, I guess, what's your recommendation in regards to this? It's y'all's to deal with. I'll handle the next one. Is that what we're saying?
No, yeah. So I don't have any authority or legal expertise to recommend anything with regard to this specific case. It's not about like how it looks or it's just about like your lawyer should advise you on how to interpret this. My advice is just let's get it into zoning so that people have more flexibility.
And if I can follow up, I definitely recommend that. And here's how I think we got some of these fences. I don't like any decision in town, no matter what it is, to be made by an individual, right? You need to have different opinions of board. Like that could be my brother-in-law. Yeah, man, that's cool. Nope, you can't do that. So when it's one person, especially if it's hired by the town and I'm going out making decisions, you don't even know the permit. It's just me. I don't mind enforcing the code because it's very clear. And it's a no in this situation, right? So I don't mind the task, but I disagree with any decision that's one person. There has to be a board is more opinions and you can argue and plead your case. I don't like any decision that was made by one person. I think it's how we got to where some of those things that are out there, right? That some people just did it without permit. Some people were told yes, maybe other people no. So moving forward, when there's a process and there's an actual board and it's on the table for everyone, I think is a fairer process in my opinion.
Would so yeah, on tracking. So would this be like in current state right now, you have the authority to say this is okay? You don't.
I do not, because as she spoke earlier, there were some gray areas, a side yard, backyard. You're already permitted for 3/4 of a 6-foot fence. You expressed to me you have this dog and this and that and the other, and I can interpret, yes, in this unique situation, you're unique 1 out of 300 houses, I can approve this 1 other third. This is clearly, even if I wanted to, I'd be violating
Yeah.
town code outright. So it's not a discretionary decision. It was actually a stop work placed on it because it was illegal fence.
So, and I hope maybe I'm mixing stuff up here, but like if somebody was to want to build a fence over a public works pipes or something like that, or going, you know what I'm talking, you know what I'm, because I've
Mhm.
had not only the one individual, you know what I'm talking about, but I've had multiple come over to me. Is that something though that you would typically?
So residential is different than commercial and even facilities, right? Because there's safety issues involved when they're public facilities. So residential is in a class of its own, if you will, where businesses and other things are different. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, I think the question is there a way to allow residential to enclose areas that are public works right of ways?
Yeah, because I
Oh,
think,
oh,
'cause
you're
what I'm
speaking
getting-
of something different.
Yeah,
Okay.
like specifically like because there's also aspects of not wasting the board of or like anybody else's time too. That, you know, for example, if a house wants to enclose their backyard, but it's going to cross over one of the like the water discharge pipes or something like that, you know, and the you know, I think we've talked about this before. Like, why can't the homeowner just write a memorandum stating that they understand they're liable if you ever have to get in there, like you described, hey, we may take this fence down.
I don't want to speak for Sarah, but say it's a similar case, deck, an addition, planning and zoning, and specifically Sarah always consults them. Hey, Jay, you need to look at this. Is there a right of way? Is there an easement? Is there a water meter? So that's taken in consideration before they debate or make a decision. And I think that would follow the same process.
Okay.
Yeah, the Board of Appeals can't give a variance for locating something in a public right of way.
Ah.
It is I would also defer this question to the lawyer as to whether there is any kind of condition or agreement that can be entered into that would allow people to put fences in that right of way. But if we issue a permit for something and then our public works department tears it up, I feel like we get into something that definitely,
Okay.
yeah, is going to want.
I'll
legal.
talk with Alyssa about it because I think there's like some common applications where you know, somebody's gonna go. I mean, there's pipes and things found everywhere. So you know, if you try to enclose something, you're gonna run into that. But yeah, I'll bring it up with Alyssa then. Thank you.
Sarah, just real quick for me, and I just want to be clear. With this recommendation, what happens next? So for adding fence regulations, will planning and zoning give us a list of regulations to go over, or what do we have to do next?
Right. So you can say to planning and zoning, we want you to address this fence issue. They are aware of the fence issue and that it needs it's hit. I think Councilwoman Blackwelder was on the commission when I was like, we probably should talk about fences, but it's kind of hit a point where it's a priority. And so I believe when they're done with the land use table, they will take up fences as their smaller piece along with coastal resiliency. So they're trying to get through those pieces quickly for you.
Sorry, Councilman Green, for clarification, if I think you're saying move it to planning and zoning so they can set regulations there. What we're saying is take the task now that I make the decision and same regulations as they exist today, but just planning and zoning would hear an appeal or approve the fence.
So we can talk about whether it should come out of building as well. I hadn't really thought about that piece of it yet, but I will. What we can do in planning and zoning though is we can allow specific types of front yard fences under specific conditions, right? And recommend that. And then that could address front yard fences. If you don't want any front yard fences, then it does become something for Board of Appeals. But we can recommend materials to deal with the light and air circulation. And one thing that Jay has mentioned to me is the vinyl fences, a lot of times in heavy winds, they'll actually lose a panel and that'll go flying. And that's a safety concern. So we can, in the zoning, say, you know, these paneled ones you have to do the staggered ones. And I realize that's more regulation, but there's good reason for it. And I think people can have more clarity and also more flexibility and more recourse if they can't meet those regulations.
Do you need anything from the council to formally communicate that they would like for planning and zoning to consider what you just listed?
not necessarily planning and zoning. I've spoken with them and they said, yes, we'll bring it up. So if they didn't want to bring it up, you might want to ask them to.
Yeah.
But you don't have to take any formal action unless you want to.
I'm sure they're watching right now. They're aware.
They're among the thousands of people that are watching us, right?
At least the chairwoman is aware and said that we will bring it up in December. So
All right.
I just have a quick comment on this. If I just want to actually focus on the case that was presented to us in the appeal. I assume this would come to us in next council meeting or the following, or
Based on what you all decide, if you think you need more time to review it. we
well,
can
I just
schedule
wanted
it
to
for
comment
December.
on this. It's pretty clear to me that all these pictures provided, there's a ton of existing fences that do not meet our code, and that's problematic. So, I mean, if we don't plan on telling these people to tear their fences down, I think it would be pretty difficult to tell this guy that he can't put a fence up. Based on the details that are provided in this appeal letter. I mean, there could be some details that I'm unaware of, but I think it's very bottom line is I think it's very problematic that we have a number of fences clearly in town that are violations of the building code. So you know, I'm inclined to approve the appeal, which would be the equivalent of a variance, based on the evidence that was provided. But I guess the other course of action would be to go through the town and find the violations and make them right. But I mean, that's a real unpopular thing to do, I'm sure.
And I appreciate that comment. We've had that internal discussion. That's exactly where we're at. And in this case, I had no choice. It violates the code and it was a stop work. So it's a valid point. I don't know the answer.
We can schedule it for the council meeting for you all to hear from the homeowner and then make a decision from there.
All right, let's move on. Since we've jiggled the agenda around a bit here, it's just fun to keep up with it. I think we are down to item 8, parking policy, procedures, regulations, and enforcement. And Dan, I think you've got the lead on that.
I tell you, if you want to talk about a fun topic and popular and opinionated, parking policy, procedures, regulation, enforcement is one of them. I know at y'all's discussion, that was a hindrance. Was a big part of when your land use in your last meeting. I was listening in, and parking was like, it's definitely it's a topic into itself. I think you said that we have to have a parking evaluation and stuff like that before we can even adapt any of these. So just starting to gather and conversate with people, and thinking about different items and public opinion in association with the other items that are on the agenda. I was going to provide some community feedback and discussions with the council, and we can figure out the best way forward. I just didn't want anyone to not think that we were all looking at parking when it has all these other items at hand. That's short and sweet about the only thing I have with parking right now.
So I think, so parking is like multifaceted. All parking is not necessarily under planning and zoning, but any new development has parking requirements. And so what we were discussing on the Planning and Zoning Commission was the parking, specifically the parking requirements for commercial daycare centers. And so I think there's sort of the difference between residential parking and in your more historic areas and how the limitations and on-street parking versus off-street parking, and then what new development is required for parking. And I think a parking study covers all of it, but not all of it is under planning and zoning in the Venn diagram of parking. So I am happy to advise and discuss whatever you guys need to talk about with regard to parking. If you want to continue to require 2 additional parking spaces for every ADU, which is what your code currently does, you will need to have a parking study done to show that that is necessary because of street parking not being available. And you will also need to have a way for folks to have a waiver from that. You can also choose not to have that requirement, but in certain areas, the parking study may make sense, and a parking study could cover more than just this ADU concern. If there are other parking concerns that you're referring to, Councilman Duval, those could be considered in there.
And I think if we realize there's so much opinion just when we talked about the water study, sort of having a collective input to say, okay, this is sort of a overall thing, and then do a parking study if we choose to do that. But at least we sort of have general guidance within to the study to look for. That's it. Yeah.
Are you suggesting we do some kind of survey in various neighborhoods about parking? And then potentially have somebody do a parking study with that information?
It's something that I think we should keep an eye on so that we know as we're looking at all this stuff that we're not just, oh, we're forgetting about parking. There currently we have to change our parking for ADU. What Sarah said, we're required to have 2, and that would mean that we would have to have a parking evaluation done. If we reduce it so that we can get into compliance with the state law, but then have discussions to find out if we need to have a parking study, these items would best suit our town. And so not just running into a decision with something that can be so unpopular as a parking policy throughout town, but to make sure you're proactive in the approach so that if and when we need a parking policy, we've done all the work ahead of time before we implement it.
What is the time frame for addressing the ADU? The state law is allowing for a year.
The state law requires that the code be in compliance in October of 2026. So
By the end of September 2026.
I'm just wondering if we're getting this next month, because that seems to be how something goes.
no,
Okay.
we don't. The Planning and Zoning Commission has not gotten to ADUs yet.
Okay. That was my only question.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Next item listed is the FIDS Covenant and Richfield Station developer activities. And Laura, I think you're going to take the lead on that.
Yes, I'd like to. So I will start out by saying thank you for putting this on the agenda. That is already a step forward. It's no secret that I wish that the conveyance of the FIDS was addressed during the recent negotiation. We are in a situation with the FIDS where we don't know how it can be conveyed, and I would like to know how is the town addressing that situation? So I know that there's things with the Richfield Station developer and also with the Richfield Station HOA president. And it's unfortunate that Alyssa is not here to address questions. But I'll let the town go first, and then I'd like to apprise the council of some things that have happened with relation to this property that really is Richfield Station's open space, their development, their planned community.
So recently, we've had meetings with both the developer, Mike Repke, and the HOA outgoing president and incoming president. So from the meeting with the HOA, we were able to figure out what their understanding is in terms of the FIDS document. The documents that they've provided so far are documents that the town already had. It's the documents that are in this packet. So when we spoke with our town attorney, she made it clear that the FIDS covenant made mention to conveyance or transfer of the property from the developer to the HOA or similar entity. But it references a document that should have been created between the developer and the HOA, which seemingly does not exist based on the conversations that we've had with the HOA and with the developer. When we spoke with the developer yesterday, we asked him about it. What document exists? He said that there has been a lot of ambiguity around the FIDS, but his intentions were to maintain it, not necessarily with him, but maintain it with the HOA or a similar entity as a something that was in the interest of conservation. That's what he communicated with us. He had no intention to develop the FIDS. When we asked, when do you plan on transferring or conveying it to the HOA? He thought about it. So it didn't seem like there was something that he had ironed out. And he said, well, when we finish. And so I asked, are you saying you finished Block S or are you referring to something else? And that's where we were able to get more information about something called Block Q and something called Block M, which was new information for me. I've not heard it mentioned in that way. If you all have, please let me know. So I spoke with our attorney after that. She's going to follow up with his attorney, the developer's attorney, to make sure that that is indeed the case. All of that has to be worked out with the HOA. And so we've shared the conversation that we had with the developer, with the HOA, and have told them that we are willing to support in whatever way makes sense for the town to support, because it is in the best interest of both the HOA and the town to have clarity on what the intentions are moving forward, the timelines are moving forward. Outside of that, there are other things that came out of that conversation, but I would feel more comfortable sharing in closed session.
Well, I would appreciate having that closed session as soon as possible. This has been put on the mayor's radar by me since day one. It's been put on the council's radar by me since day one. And I don't think it has gotten enough attention. So if you just give me a moment to tell you what has been happening with that developer. We'll start with our timeline. We've been talking about Richfield Station developers issues since February, and the FIDS has come up. Everybody was provided with the FIDS covenant, and we had conversations about it. E included the FIDS covenant on program open space, but it was removed. So that was another opportunity for the town to be aware of the FIDS covenant, where they did something physical showing that the FIDS covenant was something that was known about.
Let me just interject. It was removed at the suggestion of the Calvert County Parks and Recreation, who was compiling the whole application. And it was removed because there was no listing for sale. So you cannot request money from the state to acquire property that is not actually listed. Which
Right,
is
I
why it was
understand
removed.
that.
Yes.
My understanding as well is that program open space came up in your meeting with Richfield Station. So I was a little bit confused about that when
Which meeting with Richfield Station?
with the Richfield Station HOA president.
Which
That
that
it
was-
was mentioned that program open space is some kind of option related to this. But
Yes, but
my,
that's different than what you're mentioning here. Just wanted to clarify.
my point in mentioning it here is that the town, that's evidence that the town has been apprised of the FIDS covenant. The public works agreements were signed in September of 26, and then I had several meetings with the mayor, and then I was very shocked to learn in October that when the assistant town administrator went to look for it, it
Who's
was
that?
nowhere in town files. Well, wouldn't Wendy?
The executive coordinator, not the.
Okay, sorry, Wendy. Is she still
She
here?
left the room, so
She's
you're,
back.
you're good.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this is kind of similar to what happened to me while I was on planning and zoning. It kept getting lost.
Yeah. It's just interject also, it's not on Wendy to have that because that's not her role.
No,
So
it's
just
not, but
if
it
she
is
couldn't find it.
Alyssa and
Right. So,
the mayor.
but if
and
you go to someone who's not responsible to know it,
I didn't go to her. She was assigned to. She told me that she was glad I sent it.
okay.
So it's nothing on her. It's
Yeah, no,
not
for
her
sure.
job.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. It's not her job.
Not her job. And I appreciated her looking into it at all. I think my disappointment more lies with having to readdress it with the mayor, Alyssa, and the administrator, because it is a very important piece of property and we don't know how vulnerable it is in the hands of the developer. We don't know how to get it. Richfield Station doesn't know how to get it, and kicking it down the road and throwing our hands up, to me, is not an option, because I've watched this developer present all kinds of developments. I mean, he's redrawn his plots over and over again. I sat in a meeting where he claimed to have had approval for things, or he claimed to have the rights to do something. The planner seemed confused about his claim. And to leave a property of this importance and this significance in the hands of the developer and not know what is going on with it, to me, is inappropriate. It's inappropriate to lose this parcel either by accident or on purpose. So, like I said, I'm happy that you allowed me to bring it to this council meeting, because it deserves attention from staff. My understanding is that we're saying there's a document. We're saying that we need a formal document that requires the FIDS conveyance, but yet the developer himself has basically said he doesn't know the timing, which tells me that that document doesn't exist. And so the question becomes, what creates the document? And how can we have the document given to him so that he has to convey it? And the covenant says in conjunction with certain development, and that development is the development that you signed the public works agreements for. And last meeting I heard you say, Samelia, that he was not going to the planning commission, which I find inappropriate because his site plan should be expired at this point
For which block?
for both block, for any development associated in that FIDS area. Anything existing
Mhm.
would have passed the planning commission well past its expiration date.
There are aspects of that I will address in a closed session, but not in an open session.
Okay, agreed. So just a little history then. Right now, on your first page, you see Calvert County maps. An example of the FIDS parcel, and it has a tax ID. It has had a tax ID until recently. This is an old screenshot. Flip, and you look at what the screenshot says today, it has no tax ID. So something at the county level is going on with this parcel. However, if the developer were to sell, replat, anything with this parcel, it would be required to come by our code through the planning commission. And later on in the packet, you'll see very strange parcels that have been platted that never came through anywhere. So there's a problem to be addressed with this piece of property. And a lot of it might have to do with code violation. The next page of your packet is Richfield Station's attorney stating that he does not believe that the FIDS area has changed. And that's important to keep handy because if he tries to extinguish the covenant, here he is saying that it hasn't changed. So there's certain things that I've read that would allow somebody to extinguish a covenant. And he's stating right here that haven't done that. We need to make sure that if he builds anything, we also do not do that so that he can extinguish the covenant. So it's important for the town to pay attention. Whatever he has on whatever site plans, because we don't even know, like from council's perspective, I don't see the site plans that are associated with those public works agreements. And he's plotted his development in several different ways. So what's on the site plans? And then on the second page, well, the second page is the rest of his statement saying that, the attorney's statement saying that the FIDS hasn't changed. The third screenshot page is Mr. Rupke basically saying that he doesn't know what the timing is, which tells me there is no timing document. So at a minimum, we need a document and we don't have one. And so the question for Alyssa and the town and the mayor is how do we create or get one? Or if, what do we do to acquire the conveyance? Give if Richfield Station does not have the document in their files, and they probably don't, because here, Mr. Rupke on September 28th, 2022 is saying he doesn't know the timing for the conveyance. That means the document doesn't exist. So I think it should be a very high priority for the town to figure out how to make that document exist. And I've communicated that over this past year.
Yeah.
Next page in your packet is just the minutes of one of our planning and zoning meetings, and it's just describing how I acted on the FID covenant after it was talked about behind closed doors. And for a very long time, it was only talked about behind closed doors. And then But we never got to see it. It never came out in public meeting. Nothing ever happened with it. But I was able to find it, and it is in the land records, and it was in the land records, and it's been stated by our planner, Chris Jakubiak, that it is valid and it is an enforcement, it's enforceable. So I would like us to enforce it. I think everybody knows this, but I'm very grateful to be able to say that in a public meeting. It is Richfield Station's open space that was part of their planned community. To make that community, the developer had to dedicate 60% of it into open space. So from what I understand, he got to develop at a higher intensity in some of these areas than he would have been allowed to in the critical area. And in exchange, he owes this parcel. And it's the FIDS parcel is photographed daily. Somebody was smart enough to make the condition that we could run a recreational path through it, which would be wonderful for our community. And Richfield Station is ready to be done with development. They've had this developer in their neighborhood dragging things out for years and years and years. Everybody that backs to this has been promised that it would be open space, and some people in other areas of the neighborhood have been promised that their backs were open space, but their backs are now houses, and this developer will not stop developing if he is not made to by conveying this property. So with that said, I hope that town staff can prioritize this and happen. It's the right thing to do. It's what Richfield Station community wants. And I'm interested in what my councilmen have to say about it.
Let's make it happen.
So I've been trying to wrap my head around this. So, and I'm with you, Laura. I mean, we've been talking FIDS for like 16, 17 months now together. So, but this agreement, like, can we play, and maybe in this, if this gets into where we need to be in a closed session, then just stop me. But, is this an agreement that needs to be settled between the developer and the HOA, and then you're asking the council to play an active role in supporting that? Or because the opening, I appreciate the passion, but the opening was very like the town has to do this action. And I was under the impression that this is a HOA and developer discussion, and then we are like the town has to play in a role in accepting the covenant, the conveyance of this. So
Oh.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the
Sure.
expectation of what town staff should be doing, and what then we can do as a helping entity to that, versus saying like, because I don't know if, and I'm trying to piece together the emails that we got this past week related to this subject and what you put in this packet plus your passion. So just help me
Sure,
navigate
sure,
that.
sure. So we have the FIDS covenant.
Mhm.
And we've been asking about it, but we have these open-ended questions that seem to never be answered. And the FIDS covenant says enforceability of the FIDS covenant belongs with the mayor. Doesn't say Richfield Station HOA, it says the mayor. And additionally, the mayor also has the authority to back away from this covenant. I do not want the mayor to exercise that authority.
Really?
Really?
Well, I'm shocked to learn.
Can you believe that? But additionally, the fact that we do not understand the situation of this parcel legally is problematic for me. And it says to me that you're not properly prioritizing it.
Okay,
And so
so
that is my concern, because I think that at a minimum, with a covenant which has enforceability in the hands of the mayor, we should understand what his options are for requiring the conveyance, especially since you're fairly sure there is no document, but somehow a document can be created to require that conveyance. None of us know how.
okay, so again, please stop me if I'm going too much into something, but we have emails that says that is not enforceable by the mayor. So I'm trying to deconflict what you're stating here versus what I'm reading right here, where the question comes back to you. And I didn't see a response to this where it talks about paragraph 5, and I'm trying to find what paragraph 5 means on this document. But that message, and I'm not trying to battle you on this,
what
but I'm
is
just
the
trying to
answer
understand.
here? The question is, what is the answer, right? So,
But
so if-
that's not how you approach this. So you approach this as the town is not performing their duties to support this effort. So my question back to this is, and I want to help, like I really do. But the question to me then is, what is the town able to do and to support this? But to be honest,
we
that's not how
have
you
a
laid it
town
out in the
attorney,
beginning.
right?
Yeah.
What gets to happen? There's supposedly a document that nobody thinks exists. Like, she should be able to tell us definitively the moment has passed. And I believe she has, or she will be able to provide us with some options of enforcing the conveyance clause. But the answer, and it's unacceptable to me that there is no answer, that it's the circular conversation of there's this document, but there's not. And so my question for our town is, if there is no document, which we are fairly sure that there is not a document that anybody can find, what now can be done to cause the conveyance? If the answer is nothing, then our attorney should put it on legal letterhead and tell us definitively the answer is nothing. And then what happens?
So then that's your answer.
The-
Okay.
The
But-
developer indefinitely keeps the property? Is that what happens? And then any mayor can either enforce or not enforce the protections on it, which leaves it vulnerable.
So, what I had heard and from the video of the YouTube clip and actually, I went and talked to Bruce about it and I said, look, this right here is what I heard. And I kind of stopped listening and we chat and I was like, all right, I'll listen to it again. And when I heard forever and the additional protections in place, that's sort of like, all right, that's a move forward. And then when I listened to it again now, and then I heard Chris discuss about the mayor could back out of it, and not saying this mayor, just saying the mayor of Chesapeake Beach could back out of it with the approval and submission to the Critical Area Commission. What I understood that to mean was just kind of a disclosure, because in property, there's a bunch of the state owns like an administrative right to property. So we can only really do something in a way. And there's so much protection in this that the mayor of a municipality owns the protection and owns a thing. But just say there was a whole scenario of events where our water sewer treatment plant had gotten hit by a bunch of storms. And only choice we had was to build on that, on that property. Whole hypothetical situation, right? That's where property has an administrator, which is the state government, and the state government has procedures in place. So I think what he was saying was more of just a kind of like a little disclosure at the bottom of a statement because he made a forever statement. And that's me making an assumption on what he meant. And Sarah, being that's sort of what she does, she could maybe weigh in if she saw that. But I think we're all moving, saying, hey, we really want to make sure what would these scenarios be for this? Because everyone's assuming that this land is protected. And we want to make sure that is. And if it's not, we want to know why not. And I think we all feel like there is a protection there. And we want to make sure that is for not just you, but for the people that live there. And we want to make sure if there's something there, we want to know. Nobody's trying to sidestep that, I believe.
Okay, well, in October of last week, nobody could find it in a town file. So let's put it that way. The FIDS covenant. Now we're talking about the FIDS covenant.
So what I will say is that there are a number of things that have made it challenging to address the FIDS completely. So I will acknowledge that. The reality, however, is that from the legal perspective, we could not hold the PWAs for Block S as hostage,
Extortion.
leverage to get.
Everybody else inserted words.
Why?
Let me finish. Thank you. We could not hold that legally to say, no, you can't move forward, because there was also reason to believe, as asserted by the developer, that the town held response to his efforts to get what he needed to move forward with Block S in his PWA. He asserts that he did this in a timely manner before the plats expired, and that the town held it and did not respond to him so that it would go into expiration, and then he wouldn't be able to move forward. So we can talk further about that, but legally we could not hold the PWAs for Block S as leverage to get more information on the FIDS. That's one, not finished. The next thing is, when it comes to the FIDS document, what Alyssa shared with you all was that the covenant and agreement does not signify the conveyance. It doesn't signify the transfer. What are the terms of the transfer? When does the transfer happen? That's not here. And so what she was saying several times over the past couple of months is that we cannot use this as a enforceable document for the transfer of the property. There needs to be something in place. That's all I understood that she said. And so when we met with Richfield Station, we said that, hey, is there a document? They said, we're not really sure. We have to go check. I said, all right, check and let us know. When we met with Repke yesterday, we said, hey, is there a document? He said, no. I said, okay, well, what's your plan? He said, well, when I'm done developing. So then we said, well, when are you going to be done developing? Are you talking about Block S or something different? That's when he shared information that was new, that I've shared with Alyssa, that she's going to follow up with his attorney on. And then took that information, that conversation, back to the HOA and said, right now, we are party C. The transfer has to happen between party A and party B, which is the HOA and the developer. So it's not for us to develop that transfer document. That is for them to figure out. What I said, though, was if you need the town in any way, please let us know, because we want to be a support to you. But we also need to make sure that we are staying in our place, since the agreement is between the HOA and the developer. So we are in agreement that something needs to be done, and the town is doing that with the information that we have as it's become available. And I appreciate this, what you've put together. It would have been more helpful to have it beforehand so we could talk through it and I could have additional follow-up, right? Because I just think that makes it easier for us to be on the same page, since we're all in the same team.
Oh, I've had several conversations with everybody. I would be interested to see this Block Q and Block S and to know what it is that the developer thinks he can drag this out over, because
Yeah.
in conjunction with
I'll email you
development
the plats.
doesn't have a timeline.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why anybody would allow him to keep it, but I am interested in the closed session, and I am interested in a formal legal opinion from our attorney on this property. And once we have that, then Richfield Station will know whether or not they need to spend money firing this developer to convey the property, because he does owe it.
Absolutely.
Move on to the next item that was added, which is discuss adding a plaque to the rail trail.
Well,
Or-
we're going to defer to.
I'm sure. So I asked this to be added. Again, this was done, I'm not sure the exact year this was done, but at least 12 years ago or so. Yeah, I mean, we're probably working on it more longer than that, but I think we did. I think we were able to use some funds from the federal government from the Great Recession, and so it was that time frame. Anyway, I think it's a great asset to the town, and I'd like for the council to consider putting up some type of plaque that explains, maybe a little bit of history. There's not a whole lot of history there, but and acknowledge the work of the mayor and council who got it done.
I appreciate that. I never worked on that. I worked on that project for 22 years to get it done. And I never did it because I wanted any acknowledgement. I did it because I'm a great fan of railways, and the Chesapeake Beach Railway. And I just was happy to work on it. And it was certainly, for those of you that were here at the time, Jay, I mean, it was challenging to get it done. I'm happy that we got it done. I hope we can extend it further. I know that a lot of you have that in mind, and I think realistically we should be able to extend it to around the bottom of Richfield Station to the town limits. And when we go beyond that, we're on the BG&E right away, so you'll be able to help us there with the power lines and all that sort of thing. And but there's nothing I would like to do more than to complete what we had originally planned, and the Critical Area Commission put the kibosh on that last piece of it in Richfield Station. And then when they came down and viewed it, they asked me why we stopped there. And I said, because your commission, I mean, the lead of the commission was the one I was talking to. And I said, because your commission made us stop there. But yeah, I mean, if we're all in agreement that this is a thing to do, I'm absolutely very enthusiastic about moving forward with that.
With the plaque, what year did you want it to?
You have to look, but I know it was.
I've got pictures that.
there's
of
a-
It was
brown-
in the term. It was.
I was mayor, so it had to be.
Yeah.
Oh, so you want it from his term? 'Cause there-
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a existing plaque that has Mahoney and,
Well, yeah, but
Previous
that,
council.
what did he have to do with it
Well-
other than say yes?
that's why I'm confused, because, okay, so you want an additional plaque for the administration that put it in place?
I think that's a very, I support that. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, so maybe I'll be partially a voice of dissent here. I'm like the idea of a dedication to somebody, but is the goal here just to recognize every council member who touched that at some point in time for a little bit of self-praise? Or what is why would we not honor somebody and dedicate it to them versus a group of people who did what they were elected to do and drove it forward. So I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that in all sincerity.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
the current.
so you're saying like, we just dedicate it and have a dedicated name to it instead of the plaque? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm just asking the question.
Okay.
There is one that's already dedicated to Chairman John Bacon with the Oyster Cultivation Society.
Yeah, and that was a spinoff from after we built the trail. We were able to do the Oyster Cultivation Society because it was part of the trail. I mean, you know, the cages were suspended underneath the trail.
Love to do this in conjunction with the conveyance of the Fitz property.
That's
I like
leverage.
the way you can tie everything
You have
together.
emails or plats to look through. Thank you, Deb Montgomery. Deb Buckingham sent them to me during the meeting when the block Q came up, just a little thank her, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's food for thought, but I think at this point, I'd welcome a motion for adjournment unless anybody's got anything else.
Motion for adjournment.
There's a second. I'm sorry. Or say aye.
I think
Didn't think so.
there's gonna be a lot of chickens in the
Hey,
kids. That's what the
Over
whole
three
office is
hour
for.
session, but we got a lot done. Thank you.
Micro mobility device, Lori.
A lot.